Good morning, everyone. Got 6 people watching, and I'm just waiting for someone to come on. Um, Antonio, I think that's you. What brings me on here this fine morning? Nothing. Just had the spirit move me. I'm getting ready to leave for a trip to California, and I don't have a lot to do before then, so thought I would take some time to just hang out here for a bit. I was thinking about putting up this John Vervaeke and Jordan Hall video. But I don't really have a very good attitude about it, so I don't know if it will be edifying. Yeah, so if anybody can tell me about California, well, I know a lot about California, but I'm going to Los Angeles for a couple days, but that's going to be taken up mostly by going to a theme park, and then I'm going to San Diego, and then I'm going to Palm Springs with the family. So it's more of a trip than a vacation, but I'm sure it'll be fun. If you ever flown with 3 kids, including one who's a toddler, I'll take tips and advice, but I've got a lot of suitcases to schlep. Antonio says, "Oh man, I don't envy you. I guess I'll have to do that one day myself. Maybe. I'll put it off as long as possible, though." Yeah, I mean, kind of depends on what your wife and kids want too. If I had my way, I probably wouldn't leave my house, but I'm curious to see if that whole Christ is King thing is still on my Twitter. I was thinking that that expression is something that everybody can get behind, because Christ just means anointed, and the Jews believe that the anointed will be king. They just don't think it was Jesus. So everyone can say the same thing and have their own interpretation, and kumbaya. Antonio says, "Such is the way of man, but wife wants to travel." Yes, that is often the case. I'm in that boat. I'm always happy that I did. I always have a great time. But sometimes I need to be pushed. Although I am trying to be more of an initiator, but exotic vacations are probably just a bridge too far at this point. Orthodox Punjabi says, "Sup, bro." Sup. Remind me of your first name. I can't remember what that was. Andre, I do not remember that, but good to put the handle and the name together. I'm looking at my Twitter feed and it's just not a great idea, like ever. I don't dare share it with everybody. What the algorithm says about me is maybe not what I would like to say about myself. Oh, the vibe for today's session. Well, so far it's just kind of me sitting here. So, I think the vibe it's open ended. Hop on and set the pace. Um, Tertium comparationis says, "Excuse me, who is saying my name? I wasn't here." Not sure what you mean by that, tertium. Yeah, it looks like there's still a little bit of Christ is King controversy swirling around here. I think anti-Semitic Twitter is kind of picking up over the past couple weeks. Oh, I gotcha. Andre. You're the other Andre. Okay. Andre number 2, Orthodox Punjabi Andre says, "I'll hop on it a bit. This Christ the King thing is a good topic." Yeah, it's it certainly seems to be a weaponized phrase right now. Maybe not a dog whistle, but certainly it tends to be. I think for some people they're saying it to denote some kind of an anti-Jewish stance, and I think for other people they're just hopping in on the Christian cliche expressions bandwagon, and so I think it's just an interesting dynamic to see happen. Yes, Andre, you are the original. He's Andre number 2. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Number 2, just in terms of sequence, not in terms of value. Another reason I jumped on here is because I don't feel like this channel gets enough love in the Eastern time zone morning and midday. It tends to be very West Coast, coastal elite centric, with these like just chattings at 1 a.m., which is when most of us sensible people are sleeping. So the Marylander says, "Can you explain the controversy?" I mean, I don't know if it's a, I don't know how much of a controversy it is. I feel like it all started with. Hold on. Yo,
how's it going?
Good. It said Dre, and I didn't recognize you with the hat on, so I was like, okay, this is a random person to me, but then I recognized it was you. So somebody asked, but can I explain, or can we explain the controversy? I think the Christ is King controversy. Are you sort of aware of the general thing on Twitter, or in the? You want to give the overview of it?
Yeah, I'll go through the spiel a little bit. I think a lot of this is really more of the traditional Catholic spear, I'd say. So it really begins with with the Nicholas Fuentes. I think I don't know if I can actually say that. Is it fine to say that name or?
I mean, I can handle it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, not
if Jacob
like
gets on
he
here,
who
then we
shall
know.
I'm not doing it to be like, oh, he who shall not be named, but more like just for YouTube terms of service kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. Yeah, NF, whatever that guy.
Yeah,
sure.
That guy. Yeah, that guy. That's probably the most Jewish way to refer to him. Yeah, so we'll call him that guy from now on. That guy. He years ago. I mean, he was pushing this whole moniker of like Christ is King, as not even really an anti-Semitic canard, but more in the sense of like Catholic or like traditional Catholic kind of a.
Yeah.
Well, he calls it integralism,
Yeah.
which I think just means like making the government Roman Catholic or something along
Sure.
those lines.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a Catholic triumphalist. I mean, or just Christian generally, like triumphalist kind of claim. I mean, right? Like it's an expression that I've heard before. It's not new. It's not something that hasn't been said. And I mean, there's a feast of Christ the King. I don't know if the Orthodox have that, or an equivalent kind of feast day, but there's a Roman Catholic feast day, and so it's not. It's not something that's surprising for a Christian to say.
Not really.
I think a lot of it has to do with the context in which it's being said, and like especially like and the proximity to. I guess the context is the proximity to other events and utterances that have happened, and kind of where you're pointing, what direction you're pointing in when you say that Christ is King, and so.
I would say that while it is, just a normal Catholic phrase that comes up. I mean, it's not even Catholic; it's just a Christian phrase.
Right,
I mean, there is no direct part of the Gospels, at least that I can think of, that where it says Christ is King. I don't think that actual sentence comes up, but it's referred to in different ways across the entire of the New Testament, right? But I do think what it seems is that just like you have a Barakat Hamanim, right? And you have this whole idea of he who errs on the Barakat Hamanim is probably a little bit, he's probably not one of us. I think they're using the Christ is King thing in a similar way. So they're going, if somebody can't say Christ is King, they're not one of us.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of it's a Christian shit test or something, right?
Yes, basically. I mean, it's classic, right? Every religion has their own tests for people, and I think, but what makes it a little bit messy is that it is being used on people who either support Israel or who have Jewish heritage. So in that way, yes, it is kind of anti-Semitic, but in a different way, it is also just a way of affirming: are you like an Aryan? Are you a Trinitarian? Are you part of our group? It's a way of, yeah, just sort of deciphering between communities, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think right. It's a. I think that's a good point you raised. It like it's sort of an in-group test, but those who are aware realize that it's kind of a trap because it's like, yes, I believe that, but I'm not going to say it with you guys because I don't want to be lumped in with your group, your tribe. So it's kind of a co-opting in some ways, even though like I don't think there's nothing. I think they mean it, right? Like I think they mean it in the plain sense, but they've added an extra layer of meaning to it that now has made it a little murky. So yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem for Christians, I think. I think that just I mean, again, just obviously there's an implication when Christians say Christ is King, who they think is Christ. But obviously, that is a something that I think Jews expect to say someday as well, just maybe with a different person. And of course, that subtlety is probably lost on the general discourse here. Like that's not. But I think there's some ironies, like just sort of like with Hamas being named Hamas. It's like, we live in a simulation and it's God's simulation. So it's, you gotta find the humor in these things. So yeah. And I think that too, like, like the anti-Semitism, it's one thing to be not Jewish or consciously not Jewish, and there's another thing to be anti-Semitic, right? So I guess it kind of depends on like, like
I wouldn't even necessarily call it anti-Semitism. It's more just anti-Judaism in general. Like
yeah,
it's kind
exactly.
of a way
Yeah, it's right. Like they would just have a problem with any denial of Jesus. I guess in the same way that they'd have a problem with Muslims, atheists, everybody else. But whenever they're sort of explicitly or primarily going after the Jews, that is, then it's got a little bit of an anti-Semitic tanginess to it. So,
yeah, I mean, if you've ever watched Nick Fuentes, I actually have watched him for quite a while. I do find him quite interesting. I find him funny. I think a lot of people who grew up in, around the time I've grown up, all have a similar sense of humor. We watch Sam Hyde and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And he does sort of play on that. And I would say when he was younger, it was a lot more benign. He was a lot more benign. But as he has grown, you can see that his demeanor and his tactics have definitely changed. I don't like what he does when he mixes this Catholic integralism with some sort of white nationalism, because he does do this thing where he tries to square off like, oh, no, we can be Christian and be racist at the same time. I mean, and that is what it does come down to. I am not against anybody saying we want to preserve our people in our country. I'm not against that. But I know what he's doing. I can see how he's playing that line. Yeah, I think anybody can really. And he definitely walks that line. Some days he's happy. He's a Nietzschean. He basically has Nietzschean ethics. It's about winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever helps him to win. And if this Catholic integralist thing is helping him to win, he's going to use that tactic. He'll use black people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
He'll use Christians sometimes. Anybody who can help him win.
Yeah.
I don't personally think he's a very dedicated Christian, but I'm not judging him. But just the way he speaks, it doesn't sound like he's a Christian to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never watched him. I mean, he's sort of popped up as a character I recognize and a name I recognize. I think he's more of a younger millennial or Zoomer aged person. So not that I discount that, but he's kind of a up and comer relative to my sort of stable of influence. Um, it's interesting though. I remember when I first encountered Jordan Peterson, it was the thumbnail image on YouTube of the video was like him, talking to the students outside, and he's got his suspenders on and stuff, and he looks kind of like, I don't know what the word is, but like I actually resisted watching it for a long time because I was like, this is probably just some angry, uh, right wing rant thing where I'm just going to kind of be like, okay, maybe generally I might sort of see where they're coming from or support it, but I really don't like the tactics. And then, so that's kind of how I feel about um, the ish here, but like it's like not worth looking at. And I don't think there's. I mean, it turned out with Jordan Peterson that there was some, real depth to what's going on. Even just under the hood on the controversy. But I don't think it gets beyond the superficial with uh, with old Nick. Um, so I'm trying to think of who else is like sort of deteriorated because I think earlier, like you were saying years ago, he was much more of just kind of a vanilla like Catholic apologist type or kind of a debater guy.
Yeah,
And
I
then he
mean,
got to be
he
more,
debated with Jay Dyer,
right.
and he was very much associated with like people like classical theists who are these trad Roman Catholic apologists,
Yeah.
and it's very much in the last couple of years, maybe since 2020, or actually I think possibly the pandemic may have radicalized him in some sort of sense. I mean, it radicalized a lot of people. Um, but before that, there was definitely like a lightness to his. I mean, he was obviously talking about difficult things, but there was a lightness to his content. Like it was like we're having fun here, and
Yeah.
it's
Right.
culture war stuff rather
Yep.
than
Yep. Yep.
genuine. Now it's like a real genuine movement, and it's difficult because I know what they're trying to say. They're trying to say, hey, by the way, we just want this core of our country to be majority white. Okay, but if you're not white and you're born here, that's fine. You're part of the country. You're an American. We're not going to send you back. We're not going to be. We're just making jokes. That's always how it starts. We're just making jokes here and there. Then give it a couple of years. Okay, now you all have to go back. You know what I mean? It always it leads to what he's saying they won't do. I know it would lead to that.
Yeah. The joke isn't funny anymore. And yeah. No, it's a slippery slope, and in a true, non-abused cliche sense of that term. Um,
Yeah, I think another thing is that his like Candace Owens has definitely, she's also walking that line as well. I think a lot of these guys at the top do watch Nick Fuentes because, despite his flaws and whatever, and some of his beliefs which are a bit, out there, he does actually predict things quite well. He is
yep.
good at making predictions, and that does give him some sort of edge um, compared to other political commentators. And I think that Candace Owens and some of these more grifting kind of conservative channels are latching onto that slightly because he does have power with youth. I mean, he has got an army of kids who are about 16 to 18 who are in sort of joining in, creating TikTok edits, all that kind of stuff. Hey, David. Um, so I think he's got a lot more sway over the culture than people think, in my opinion.
I wanted to hop on because I realized I've actually seen this a couple of times in my own life with people. Like I knew this girl, she was good friends with my sister, and she just wanted people to dare her at parties to make out with girls when people were like getting drunk. And then when she came out as gay, no one was like, no one was very surprised. It's like you've you've been playing with this as a game for a very, very long time before you ever actually said I was doing this for real. And then I don't know if you guys watched a bunch of ContraPoints videos, but early ContraPoints, so ContraPoints early videos comes out as genderqueer, as I'm a man, but I wear women's clothing, but it's not women's clothing because it's my clothing. So it's not, I'm not actually trans, and was explaining what the term genderqueer even meant. Well, after a couple of years of being genderqueer, is now trans and is medically transitioning. And ContraPoints did a whole video on the alt-right and on the concept of dog whistles and joking and everything, and said, these people are making jokes that they can hide behind, and then later on they say, no, this was actually, like, to everyone in the know, we believe they're serious. And ContraPoint said that when they would get invited to like a Halloween party, they'd go in drag as a joke, right? And so they do it as a joke for years, and then sooner or later people are like, it's not Halloween, and Bill is still wearing that dress, eh? Last week it was a joke, and now it's completely serious. And there's a couple of people that have entered in through joking. I don't know if this is a part that I'd love your guys' response. I find that men are unwilling to commit to things at first and will do it as a joke before they engage it legitimately. So I like colorful shirts. And a good amount of guys' Hawaiian shirts or whatever, if they have bold colors, will oftentimes have like a hot dog fighting a taco. It's like, you can't make fun of me for wearing color because I'm making a joke of it.
Yeah, like I'm not being serious, and so I have plausible deniability here.
That's right. That's
But
right.
if it's okay and no one makes too much fun of me, or like it gets normalized, then I can start doing it for real. I mean, I think in some cases, I think people do that all the time. Maybe men do it more, I don't know. But I mean, certainly there's a little bit of that's where like that sort of detached irony kind of makes it safe to play around. But I do think that when it comes to like ideologies, though, to your point, you have to be mindful of this phenomenon, because you can see that, it's not going to be much. It's cold comfort when after the fact, you see it and you're like, oh, well, we saw this coming a long ways away. It's like, well,
right.
I mean, some things are obviously more dangerous or, less, but it's like you gotta call. You gotta call it out early, or just say. I think in some cases like have to just you got to be vigilant about sort of saying what this thing is and where this thing can lead, and you'll probably be accused of being a shill or like maybe like a Chicken Little.
But that within that is also the problem, because you have these ideas where it's just like you're assuming this hermeneutics of suspicion that, oh, you said this, but you actually mean this. You said this, but you actually mean that. Because sometimes that's true. And sometimes it's just like, no, am I allowed to actually just walk this line where I'm just making critique? Like, no one's going to accuse Jacob of being anti-Semitic if he makes a criticism of the state of Israel. But some people who do are doing it for specific reasons, and they can hide behind all kinds of stuff.
Well, and then you can get into the situation where if people call out let's just call it like the Christ is King rhetoric as being anti-Semitic, then you've now weaponized a bunch of Christians who can suddenly now feel like they're being persecuted by non-Christians, and it's like, see, we can't even say what we believe, or like, we can't even make the statement without being accused of some slur. I think that
it's all very gay. It's very gay because people are just like, so I'm sorry, but it is, because it's like everybody's talking behind these subtexts
Right,
Like,
right.
I've recently taken on this I feel like it's a very Hebraic thing where if somebody doesn't say something to me, it just doesn't exist. Like if they're trying to put a subtext,
Right.
unless they actually say what they mean, I'm not going to actually accept it. So I think what people need to do, especially if you're a Christian or even Jewish or Muslim, well, I don't know about Muslim, but Jewish or Christian, right? You are told, speak the truth, speak nothing but the truth.
Right.
So what the problem with Nick Fuentes is he is utilizing meta irony. I don't want to get all cringe with meta irony, all this stuff.
No,
But
no, no. I've become obsessed with this recently because I realized that the devil didn't lie to Adam and Eve. It is emphasizing things in a way that is misleading.
Mm.
That is the subtlest of all lies, is this idea that you could say something and you mean something different, but you don't actually lie. Their eyes are open. There is specific ways in which they're described as being like God. And they don't die that day. So what the devil says is entirely true, but completely misleading. That you can do that. You can be misleading while saying nothing but the truth.
I think
it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, well, maybe not in every case, but I think that's kind of part of how bullshit works. It's sort
to
of
me, it's very feminine. It's like you're being not passive aggressive, but you're using language in a weird way.
That's perfect. That is really good. And I think that a lot of the conversations about like pickup artists and everything else is trying to understand how you figure out language that isn't direct. So a lot of the I'm pretty sure Homath is very autistic, where it's like how an autistic person can read women, the hardest of all communicators, right? Like how do you get at, because it's essentially women are just always dog whistling. They're saying stuff that has dual meanings, and how do you understand it and pick it up?
It's not necessarily incorrect either. Like they are sometimes doing that, but at the same time, you have to when you have a proper conversation with somebody, you're not constantly like analyzing. You're not like doing this. Is that what they mean? Is that you're just turning off a part of your brain, and you're kind of just interacting. I don't know if maybe that's not how it works for everybody. For me, I feel that when you have a conversation with somebody and it's really good, there's like a certain part of your brain that switches off, and you're sort of in this kind of like it's self-propelling. It's and I think
I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've experienced the opposite as well. Is in the middle of a conversation, you begin to realize, wait, I'm realizing how everything I'm saying is connecting with this person. And I realize what experience they're having, which is different than what I was intending before.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that can definitely happen too. Yeah, I guess if you're inadvertently, like, maybe you have some position of power, or you're giving out I'm just going to use Zoomer language, like a bad vibe. And you and you didn't realize you were doing that at first, but then you become self-aware of that, then I guess yes, you can switch into your analytical side. But I feel like when it's somebody close, or somebody that you have some sort of connection with, you don't really have to think as much when you're having a conversation with them. You're just saying the things that are coming out of your mind without a filter. You're just telling the truth. And I think what these guys are doing is that they're using the fact that there's censorship, and they're creating like very intricate ways of avoiding censorship they've got these inside jokes that unless you've been watching or participating in that community for a long time, you would not know what those jokes are.
Dre, can I ask you a personal question? Are you married?
No.
Okay. So that was my guess, because there is conversations where I find myself constantly asking myself, what is the person actually meaning? And it's when I'm engaging with my wife. Because when I'm having a conversation with her, I'm just like, it was like, I was talking to Jacob about this yesterday. It's like early marriage, mistake is to just think that she means what she's saying. And as like time goes on, you're like, wait, like she's getting at something, right? Like and it'll sometimes be I address the issue that she's bringing up and she's still upset, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm addressing the issue that she brought up. I'm dealing with this thing. And there was Film Crit Hulk had this whole I don't know if you followed that, Film Critic, but Film Crit Hulk had this whole article on what he called tangible details, which is when you're criticizing a film and you don't know why you don't like it, there are things that you can grab onto and it's tangible. So you say that that's the reason why you didn't like it, even though it's not true. So an example is that comic book movie was bad. It didn't follow the source material. It's like Christopher Nolan's Joker didn't follow the source material. We all loved that movie. It didn't follow the source material at all, but it was fine. But you use that criticism, it didn't follow the source material, when you don't know what you can grab onto. So you grab onto these tangible details. So someone will be upset with something. They don't know even what they are upset with and bring up a tangible detail. And it's like, that's not actually what you're upset with. It's just something that you knew you could grab onto. Right. My mom does this because she doesn't think, if she doesn't think that people would be willing to take care of her, she'll grab onto something that she knows that people care about. So we were going for a walk and my mom was getting very tired. And my sister-in-law was walking with us. And my mom said, the sister-in-law is tired. We should go back. She did not observe that the sister-in-law really was tired. It's that my mom was tired, but didn't think anyone would care if it was about her. So, yeah. Is no one going to address the gigantic circular object behind David? I'm working on a painting. Okay? I'm working on a painting.
I saw that. I was just like, I'm just going to leave it.
I
didn't know what it...
I noticed the paints and things on the stool and the rocking horse before I even noticed the thing behind you, because I thought it was some kind of big, like, I don't know, like a green screen kind of deal. Because it's mostly white.
Yeah, that's what I thought, like a lighting thing for a camera or something.
No,
like just a huge one or something.
So it's a painting that's going to have 7 layers to it. So you're it's the days of. Here, I'll show it to you.
I knew it. It looked religious.
That's a very medieval way of doing it, like representing it. I quite like that. Like celestial spheres and stuff like that.
So it's the days of creation. This is the center of the image. So at rest, creation of the animals, Eve coming out of Adam, but it's layered. It's like a carving.
It looks like an icon slightly.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. And then this thing,
decent.
Yeah, this thing is the creation of fish and birds. So this side I just finished.
Marylander asked, in acrylic? Yeah.
Oh, this Enigmalia said, a good question is, how much are you joking about X subject? If it's all the time, what's on the surface begins to become very compelling. So I think that that's quite interesting. Like, yeah, if you're once or twice, I mean, like if anybody's looked at like memes online for a long time, you'll understand that they play with this quite a bit. Like, I know memes are so cringe to talk about, but they are kind of like the playground for ideas in the modern age, in terms of they do carry a lot of philosophy and they can actually convert people to certain ideologies and stuff like that, which is obvious in the last couple of years. But I mean, if you look at how there's lots of jokes like kissing the homies goodnight, which I know that the other Andrew even he likes to mess with these jokes a lot, and I'm always like, why? Why are you doing this? Do you know what I mean? And I just feel like if there's a lot of that going on, I think it can be a cover for certain other things. That because if that becomes a widespread joke, like, oh, kissing homies goodnight, or I'm only gay for my homies, or whatever, you know, or call me Marge because I miss you, homie, right? All these kinds of things, right? I think they're playing with an idea because they want to see like who's going to participate in this. If they're participating in it, then it's like they're in on the joke. Like, yeah, we really are gay. Don't clip that. Oh wait, I can't hear you. Oh, you're muted.
You're good. David's muted. You're fine. Oh, David,
But
you're muted.
Oh, okay.
Am
I back?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah, if you want to.
I would become really upset when Marvel updating characters like Bucky is gay now, and stuff like that really upsets me because I'm just like, men can be friends and it's not gay. All right, why can't we just like? And I've said this with a friend of mine. I'm married, but me and my wife are both theater people, right? And so I've jokingly said I'm clearly queer coded. Is like queer coding is like when a character is like, we're not saying they're gay, but they're obviously gay, right? And I'm just like, I feel like I'm obviously queer coded because if you take that to too far of an extreme, it's just like any man who's a good friend with another man, it's gay. It's gay, guys. It's obviously Bucky is so committed to Captain America because he has lustful feelings towards him.
I personally, I think one interpretation of that whole situation of turning male friendship into this gay thing, I feel that one interpretation you can have of that is it's kind of nefarious. They're doing this to try and stop male friendship so that, you know, because I mean, 200 years ago, deep male friendships like forged in battlefields or whatever, I think men were like saying "I love you" to each other, even hands like hugging each other, very like, and that wasn't seen as a gay thing. Like in the Gospels, John lays on Jesus's chest, right? And that's not seen as like obviously now you have like the Da Vinci Code guys and all that saying that he was gay or whatever, but it was not seen as a gay thing. It was just seen as a sign of affection between friends. And I think it's this idea of one potential interpretation is if we can poison this idea of male on male friendship, we sort of weaken communal bonds. And therefore, it's more difficult for people to have some sort of capital, some sort of social capital to help them ascend hierarchies, if you want to use like Jordan Peterson language. That's one interpretation. I think another thing is some people just find it funny because it is kind of funny to be like,
it's super funny. It's very funny, but it's interesting because I think some elements of it are done absolutely intentionally too. Like the term "gay" used to refer to a guy who slept with a lot of women. It was a term which meant a slut, and then if you were if you were the sluttiest of sluts, essentially, you didn't just sleep with women; you also slept with men. So you have this term which meant the most heterosexual becomes the most gay, which is also why if you watch 300, you're like, this movie is kind of gay, isn't it? Like it's just, or you're watching UFC or whatever, and you're like, this is two very manly, two guys punching each other in the face, and then always ends with them spooning on the ground. It's like, at what point did this shift kind of happen? And there were people like the slow march through the institutions of people wanting to say things subversively, wanting things like the way that Christ the King is being used, wanting to say something that has dual meaning, that is the, what is that called? Mott and Bailey, right? Your Mott and Bailey arguments where you can retreat to one, and the left is doing this all the time. And then we're kind of like surprised that, oh, wait, people on the right might be doing it too. Or maybe everyone is doing it all the time, which is exactly why, Dre, I think you were saying You want people to say things outright. You want them just to say exactly what they mean, and you have so much respect when someone isn't hiding behind a taco fighting a hot dog, but actually is doing what they really believe in.
I think it's more heterosexual to just tell the truth. I think that's the most heterosexual thing you can do, because hiding behind words is like, it's kind of like if a woman says, "Hey, do I look fat in this?" and you have to say, if you just say what you were going to say, yeah, you kind of do look fat, or you don't look fat. That could end up in a problem. I think it's a lot of this is to do with like HR culture as well, like the idea of corporate culture where you sort of have to use coded language in the workplace to get things across. Like, if somebody says, instead of saying, "Oh, that idea sucks," never bring it up again. You have to say, like, let's circle back to that, like, or just anything that people say in the workplace to sort of avoid having to tell the truth about the situation. I think a lot of that has just seeped into the culture because our parents got used to using that language, and I think they possibly used that with us a little bit when we were growing up, and that's how it's snowballed a bit.
I think it's the opposite. I think the culture is bled into the corporate environment. But I mean, I don't disagree with. I think
either way is
the
fine. I think
existence of them.
Yeah, you could say that the corporate culture has affected us, or you could say that we've bought into the corporate culture. I think either way makes sense. But yeah, I think there's just that idea of, I think also like participation trophies when we were growing up, all these kinds of things like, oh, you're a winner even if you didn't win. So it begins with telling these white lies. I think white lies are therapizing language. Yeah, I do think that there is a lot of people who definitely do that. They try and figure out what's your issue by analyzing your language. Like,
Mhm.
if you're quiet too long, somebody might be like, "Hey, what's going on with you?" Or if you're tired, they might be like, "Are you okay?" And it's just like, dude, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just tired. I'm just not thinking. I think everybody feels like we have to pry into other people too much now.
Well, I think part of it though is because we realized how much people were hiding. Like, how many times does a very conservative Christian pastor have to be caught having gay sex while on meth? He was on meth. Yeah. Anyway, I'm thinking of a particular news story, and we just go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So there's an element of Freud that makes perfect sense. The idea that people are repressing, that they're covering things up.
I think the Freudian kind of move has been totally weaponized, where you just assume that Dre, you think everything's gay because you're just closeted, right? And so that's basically like, and so you can't escape anything you point out, anything you go towards. It's just like, well, it's just because you're secretly harboring the other kind of viewpoint or something. So
Islamophobic, you secretly must want to be a Muslim. If you're arachnophobic, you must love spiders. I don't know. Just whatever, right? It does get used.
Didn't you say that about somebody the other day though? I didn't agree with it.
I did say something similar to that.
Who was the?
This is a duality of man.
But I mean, I do it with the term Islamophobic because the term Islamophobic was created so that any criticism of Islam could be dismissed. So it in and of itself is exactly what the term is. It's actually so then it becomes this flip where you can just dismiss anyone who uses that term. They don't really mean it.
And then
the way I was using it the other way. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say the way that then ends up getting kind of like defanged, or the backlash against that is like embracing the term and then saying basically now, like, I will adopt this identity and now what, right? Which sort of then is what escalates and makes extreme extremist positions, I think, is because you just get so tired of sort of being in this impossible situation that you're just like, fine, I'm just going to call myself this now and I'm just going to go with it. And now what?
I think that's what's happened with Nick Fuentes. Actually, I think that is legitimately what's happened.
Well, and that happened with Owen Benjamin. Did you guys ever follow Owen Benjamin?
I did for a little bit, but that guy went crazy.
Not on record.
Well, see, that's exactly what I mean. Is like early on, he was on the Rubin Report. He was, he was friends with Joe Rogan. He was on like multiple times. He interviewed Jordan Peterson for a very long time, and he had that whole like leaving the left. He had a video on PragerU, and like now he's like straight up believes. He talks about, in order to cover what he's saying, we'll sometimes say the men with small hats. Was his term, and I really liked him as a comedian for a while, and then he kind of was jokingly, but then nudging, and then it kind of hit a point where I'm like, okay. He also got kicked off YouTube, so you don't.
So which came first? Like, was that his sort of secret belief that he was harboring the whole time, or do you think he got pushed into more of that adoption? Because
it's the fear that everyone has when you get into conspiracy theories. Is like, have you seen the conspiracy theory chart where the conspiracy theory, was it Iceberg or some woman did a like a hierarchy of conspiracy theories, and like some were completely harmless, and then where it gets really crazy, she referred to as the anti-Semitic point of no return.
Well, that's interesting. I'm sure I've seen some kind of a diagram like that, and the proliferation, of course, in the rabbit hole with the algorithms and such of conspiracy theories you get exposed to is, everlasting. But you're right, it does. There is a point which you like get into you cross the event horizon of like the anti-Semitic conspiracy for sure. I'm curious what you guys think is like, what's sort of the tip of the iceberg? What's the most common entry point
JFK.
Is it JFK? Because you got JFK, moon landing,
9/11.
I don't think flat Earth is there.
9/11
being an inside job, or I guess any kind of 9/11 conspiracy theory.
I think 9/11 is the starting point.
I find that definitely made it considerably more popular, but there's also communities within communities and how those things pop up. So if you were black, everyone who's black believes that MLK and Malcolm X, that those were, if you just watch a movie like Judas and the Black Messiah, right? And you realize, okay, so the CIA had inside people in a lot of things, right? And then you see all these leaders all of a sudden die, right? And then you ask why people in the black community were less likely to get the jab. It's just like, what is your best argument for a black dude that knows about the Tuskegee experiments? Do you guys, the Tuskegee Airmen? Where it's just like, what is your best sell to the black community to get the jab? We swear we're not fucking with you this time. That's your best pitch for, right? And like, so then it makes a lot more sense why more white people trusted the jab as well. Like, did you already see problems within this, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that type of stuff, I think I actually really find black conspiracy theories to be like just interesting and funny, just compared to, because like white people conspiracy, like if we can call it white people conspiracy theories, it's like basically it all just boils down to Christ said that this is the synagogue of Satan and they're against you forever. That's basically what every white person theory boils down to. But if you take a black person theory, it's always, I don't like white people, and this guy who's powerful in the black community is secretly gay. That's every single black conspiracy theory. And so most of them are kind of right, to be fair, like with the P. Diddy stuff, but most of it is literally just this rapper is gay. Like, seriously, just go on YouTube, type in like conspiracy theories, and it'll be like the CIA put crack into the the communities during the 80s, and they helped invent gangster rap so that we would commit more crime. And then all the main rappers are gay. That's literally that's probably 80% of Black conspiracy theories, I would say. Oh, and that they were every race at the same time and every slave at the same time too. I don't know if that is remotely what you guys are thinking.
Well, so my increased interest in conspiracy theories came with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, because I was aware of a lot of the and I saw a lot of people enter in, like, to dive in after that point, is basically the weirdest conspiracy theory turned out to be incredibly plausible all of a sudden. It's just like, wait. So he was friends with this guy and that guy. And then you just look into it, you're just like, wait, what? This is the weirdest thing. And Dre, you were just talking about it. I don't know if you were following the news about P. Diddy, but like, it's like, yes, is that a conspiracy theory now? That was like, that is happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think also people have spoken about, like, I don't think conspiracy theories are necessarily incorrect. Like, isn't it like history that since the beginning of time, there's always been a more capable group of people who are in your society who just by literally ascending the ladder of power just through education and money, they say we kind of don't want to be near the poor people, so let's group together slightly so that we can get away from the poor people a little bit. Isn't that just every single society throughout history, bar none? Like, I don't think that's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Okay, I am now sharing the image. Here. Let me see if I can make it. Can I make it bigger? Yeah, there we are. So at the bottom, you have grounded in reality. This is the whole thing. The anti-Semitic point of no return. Right? People sent me this because they knew that I like some conspiracies. So this part is things that actually happen. So Tuskegee is there. FBI spied on John Lennon. MK Ultra, Bohemian Club. Big Tobacco lied about cancer. Operation Mockingbird. COINTELPRO. Speculation line. You got UFOs. JFK assassination, Princess Diana. Epstein didn't kill himself is somehow in this area. I mean, I kind of get it. Yeah, okay, fine. Free Britney, Denver. Okay. And this section says we have questions. Then leaving reality, false, but so it's saying that it's false, but mostly harmless. Crop circles, Elvis lives, Prince Charles is a vampire. Cryptids, Bigfoot, the Beatles never existed, Avril Lavigne replaced.
I've never heard the Beatles never existed. Now that's one I need to go.
I've never heard these ones before. I mean, I know the idea of Paul is dead from the Beatles, like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I don't know about the Beatles never existed.
There's ones that I absolutely love. There's like one is that manatees are people you can come across now, and so some of them are also just like weird factoids. Like sometimes I see them and I sometimes watch videos and sometimes I'm like, no, I can't. I have a friend that's into ones where newer buildings he believes are actually ancient relics. I'm like, no, please, you have to stop. So then you got your science denial, anti-vaxxers, chemtrails, COVID-19 made in a lab is in this section.
Who made? Yeah, this whole pyramid is suspect now.
This is what I mean. They send me this thing, and I'm like, okay.
Dangerous to yourself and others, and then it turns out that it was true. So it's like, you kind of lost credibility.
Yeah, exactly. And and then within the anti-Semitic point of no return, you got your New World Order, Elders of Zion, Deep State is in that, as if that's not real. Right. Satanic cult, and again, Pizzagate. is here.
This is not properly categorized because I think
Correct. It's
Yeah.
there's some
It's just really
editorializing
wrong.
here for sure.
But this actually, I think it being badly done is part of what makes it good. And what I mean by that is this is an examination. This is a critique coming from someone who has not actually engaged in pretty much any of this stuff. This is so they consider something like COVID-19 made in a lab to be less substantial than crop circles.
Right. Yes.
Like, what?
Yes.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
And yeah,
dinosaurs didn't exist as well. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, in the Bible, it talks about like Tannin and Leviathan and all these kinds of things. I mean, couldn't that just be what's considered a dinosaur? Dragons, all these things. I don't know about all that kind of stuff. I feel like this is just so wrong.
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
it.
it's incredibly wrong. I just brought it up as a conversation piece because it got kicked around a lot.
Nazis on the moon. I've never seen that one before.
Yeah, Nazis.
That's because you weren't on the moon with them.
I love. Honestly, some of my favorite conspiracy theories are also just like you don't even have to go nefarious. It's just bizarre. Like,
Yeah.
do you guys know about the mosquito bomb?
Antifa starting wildfires. I swear I saw in the news that they found people intentionally starting fires. Like on BBC, they found people in Spain intentionally starting crop fires.
Yeah. So
I-
David, you were saying like, I mean, some of them are like harmless fun, and I
Yeah.
think, yeah, and I've seen a few of those, and they are entertaining, and I think that is part of the allure and why they're so easy to manufacture, because the structure of a conspiracy theory is to take a bunch of disconnected dots and start connecting them to form some kind of a picture or a pattern. And it's something that we do as humans. We pattern recognize, and it'd be interesting to like ask ChatGPT to create a conspiracy about something, because I'm not sure if that's ever been done. I've never done it myself,
right.
but I mean, since ChatGPT and large language models are just language predictors.
Let me tell you one of my favorite. I think it's a conspiracy theory that people need to know.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory, which I had seen. Where did I see this? I can't even remember. It was someone who was ex-CIA saying that when they were doing experiments with spy planes, they would encourage conspiracy theories about UFOs. And so you have this conspiracy theory that is creating conspiracy theories, that conspiracy theories are part of the conspiracy, and that we have good reason to believe this, that occasionally happens.
Yeah, it's like a form of propaganda.
Right.
To manufacture conspiracies in order to, sort of be a diversion from what's really going on, which just feeds the fire of the paranoia and the
right. Of like, and I honestly, I do feel all this stuff is related. That what you're getting at is exactly the same thing when you're having mere conversations with people. The idea that things are actually hidden, and can I actually trust you? Can I actually know what you're getting at? Or are you doing this because you're actually one of the lizard people, right? Like, is that what's going on?
Or so the Germans would have us believe.
Is the Germans?
That's a classic.
That's an old Norm Macdonald Weekend Update bit he used to do. He would like go through all these stories and then just like turn to the camera and like just say, or so the Germans would have us believe.
Yeah, that's a classic, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, I think there is a definite path. And I think it does start with 9/11. I think even before that, it starts with your life noticing in some way that someone has lied to you at some point, and not just that person, but there was some other people who were connected to that person who participated in that lie, and then that just makes you deeply suspicious of everything. And that's where you begin. And then you begin to become a skeptic. Or maybe you're introduced into science and they're like, be skeptical of everything, always question everything as a scientific method. So I think what ends up happening is you take that same mindset and then go into history, which is, it's not actually, a lot of history isn't supposed to be approached in a positivist way or a scientific way, but let's take that and become skeptical of everything. And that's why when it comes to 9/11, I think that really is the beginning point into the anti-Semitic trail, because a lot of that is connected with like Israel, and in terms of like the conspiracy theories connected with Israel, Iran, and all these kinds of things. And then I think, personally, I think evangelical Christianity, in terms of like end times prophecy stuff, also is fueling a lot of these conspiracy theories. I mean, evangelicals themselves, they love Israel, they love Jewish people, but a lot of their end times prophecy stuff has actually led to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And I think that, yeah, 9/11 is
Yeah.
the start, and then you head out into just deeper and deeper into other things, and always connecting it back to Israel or the Mossad or something
Well,
like that.
so I'm going to say something, and you see, this is the thing. Even the qualifications, like, please trust me, I'm not anti-Semitic. Please, please trust me, right? But like the state, there were government officials within the state of Israel that said, after they had retired, that the term anti-Semitic was used as to control narrative. That they would throw that out the way that Muslim apologists would use the term Islamophobic, that like you use a term to dismiss, and then what that does is it's essentially printing bad, like printing bad money, right? You printed more money, and now it doesn't the actual currency is not real anymore. It's been deflated because of how you use the term. But that it makes sense. Like, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, how many people did I know where after the fact I started to actually question within my own life what people meant by having abuse in their background, even, right? Where people would, like, knowing people and all of a sudden going, I don't know if that person was trustworthy. So maybe something happened to them, but maybe that was a way of gaining support from people when they didn't know how to ask for it.
Yeah, I think there definitely is a bit of that going on, where I don't want to use the term. See, the thing is, even using the term poisoning the well, it's like, you know what I mean? But I mean, there is a little bit of that going on. Like, if a term itself becomes weaponized, then it creates antipathy towards the person who made it into a weapon, and then that kind of becomes this vicious circle of, well, you're not allowing me to criticize you because of this tool you've created, and now that's making me hate you more because you're not allowing me to, like, why is it that you are not allowed to be criticized? Or at least that's what people will say. And I think there has to be an acknowledgement from both sides that, okay, there are times when people are genuinely being hateful, and there's times when people are genuinely asking questions, trying to figure out stuff. One side has to tell the truth when they speak and say, look, I'm asking this question because I genuinely don't know. And the other side has to not assume that that other person is trying to get some sort of leg up on them, or trying to say something hateful. It's really just a problem of trust, I think, because I think you have two different mindsets. And I noticed this when I joined the Discord, is that when you're coming from an extremely Christian, or when I say Christian, I mean like Western mindset, where it's like heavily influenced by Greece and that kind of thing, and then you go into a different, like, so for instance, this Discord is Jewish, and you go into a Jewish Discord, you understand that the methods and patterns of thinking are completely different. So in order to talk to that person, you have to almost translate it slightly from what you're saying. So a lot of the a lot of the thought in the West is more to do with abstract ideas and values and traditions, these sort of very ethereal things. Whereas in what I've seen in the East is it's more to do with concrete things, i.e., actual manifestations of an idea. So, for instance, kindness isn't just a sentiment or a way of acting, but it's actually doing things that are kind, right? So there's like a difference in the way that the West and the East speak. And I think when it comes to this whole anti-Semitism thing, we're just there's two groups just talking a completely different language to each other, and there's no connection going on, especially between Christians and Jews. They're talking in a completely different language, and I can see it now. Having
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's the big problem I do think is talking different languages, but the other thing is that talking different languages and someone's lying. So if you don't know a word, it's a common joke where someone doesn't speak a language and someone of that language tells them, "Oh, this is how you say that," but what you're actually saying is like, "My butt is hurting. I have diarrhea," right? Like, and you just like announce that to like a room, thinking you're saying something nice. So there, I think you really hit it when you said that really this is about trust, right? It's really more than anything about trust, because in a situation where you can't trust, like in a situation where you completely trust people. I was My ex-girlfriend was a Syrian, so from northern Iraq, not Syrian, Assyrian, like Iraqi, and her grandfather died, and I was there like 2 minutes after, and the grandmother did not speak English at all, and she communicated something to me without words, that she like pointed and shook her head and like pointed in a different direction, and I knew exactly what she meant, that you can have communication where no, like I still get the truth even without knowing the language, versus I know every word that you said and I have no idea what you're getting at, right? That's the that's the breakdown. That's where we are. We're not in a state where even with no words we get what each other means. It's I have no idea. I don't know if you're lying. I don't know if you're aware that this is untrue. I don't know if you're playing or joking or anything.
Yeah, and I think that's why you'll see a lot of these right wingers talk about high trust societies. You want to be part of a high trust society, high trust, high trust, high trust. That tends to be a big talking point of why, for instance, they'll say we need a core white majority because then it will be an extremely high trust society. You see people like Paul Joseph Watson going on about this, and I think there is a point to that. You do need high trust societies, but what the error I think the error that the right wingers make is that they say it can only be high trust if it's 100% white. Like, because
Or Christian, like within the Christian nationalist circles, they have conversations about how what is it? Adams said that a democracy only works with a religious people. That's what you require. You require a moral, religious people in order for a democracy to function, and that outside of that, if you can't trust the people and if they don't have morals of their own, then capitalism means you buy lots of drugs for yourself and kill yourself, or you buy food that makes you obese, or whatever it is. Like,
well, I'll say something that's like this. So we have a saint called Saint Silouan of the Athonite. So he's from Mount Athos, and he had a one of his monks was going out to a Buddhist temple and was trying to convert the people, and he was getting kicked out, beaten up, and thrown out of that temple pretty much every day. And he went to Saint Silouan saying, "Why is this happening to me? What's going on?" Saint Silouan said, "So how do you try and approach these people?" He says, "Well, I watch the service, then I walk directly into the middle, call them all idolaters, and shout at them until they throw me out and beat me up. He said, well, it makes sense why they're doing that. You need to approach it in a slightly different way, saying, oh, what devotion you pray with, and actually appreciate the devotion that they have. And then say, if only you added this one little thing, you would be perfect. This is his way of saying this is the bit where you add the gospel. I think when it comes to integration into societies, if you take that story and say there's good things in every society in terms of there's good values in every society, you just need to explain to the person who's coming into your society where you have slightly different rules or different formalities. If you add this little bit, you will integrate into our society perfectly.
See,
But you're just not adding that little bit.
What is funny about that is the Marxist dialectic. The Marxist dialectic is how you take two things which are opposing and then you somehow put them together to make sense of each other. That's why, that is part of Marxism, a point that he makes. And then as a result, someone like James Lindsay, if you follow some of his stuff, anyone who tries to do that, he's like, that person might be a Marxist, might be a Marxist, might be a right? So that he now thinks that like Jonathan Pajot is a Gnostic because because well, this is a cult and that's a cult. So if you make a reference to that, then you must be part of the occult, and therefore you're connected with this. And it's.
I think that's just weird. There's things in Marxism that are correct. I don't know how you can get like you're just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're just saying, oh, because the entire system as a whole is rotten, you want to throw out all the good things along with it. You can't. I think that's the problem, is that people want to throw out everything and say, and I think this is a very Roman Catholic thing. You know that when they go to different countries in the past, they enculturate, meaning they wipe out what's there, and then they say, no, you must do it this way. Whereas I think you find in like for instance in the Eastern Orthodox, when they go to places like say Alaska, they're like, okay, you have totem poles, okay, let's have Orthodox totem poles where we redirect the meaning into a correct, it's something that can work with our system. Now obviously totem poles, if you're talking about Judaism, that's just going to be straight up like a kum or something like that.
Do you know, have you ever heard the Huron Carol? Do you know Huron Carol? So Huron Carol, I'm in Canada, and I visited this one place where the Huron Carol was actually written, and it was Catholic missionaries coming in contact with the First Nations people, and they communicated the gospel to them using language they understood. So they were just like, okay, traditionally, Mary and Joseph take a donkey. These people have never seen a donkey before. Okay, so then Jesus took a canoe, right? So they would refer to God the Father in the word for the Heavenly Father that already existed within First Nations understandings of the world. Is they were just like, no, this is this and that's that, and that's how we can make this all kind of work out. So it's an interesting one. It's called Huron Carol. I recommend.
The same thing happens in the Canaanite religion, like El, Yahweh. All these names are just names of particular gods in a pantheon, and they say, okay, well, you're calling the sea monster, you're calling the sea Yamu. Okay, well, God, the highest God created Yamu. The highest God created the Tannin. The highest God created this, and that. All these names you use for God, you're now going to direct that to the one God.
Yahweh is the one who crushes the heads of Leviathan, right?
Exactly.
That is within Canaanite literature. I think it's Baal, and interestingly enough, Baal was probably a title that was given to God, given to Yahweh, or sorry, for all the Jews, Hashem. And same thing with Molech. Molech is the word for king. And one of the ways that God is referred to the most in Jewish prayers is Melech Haolam, king of the universe. So the Melech and Molech it's the same name, right? That's getting back to exactly what we were talking about. What do you mean when you use that word? Do you mean, I mean, yeah, literally,
Yeah.
Jesus is king, right? Is Jesus Molech or Melech? What are we talking about?
Yeah, and I think the way that that most Christians are using it is to mean that he is the king of the universe, which
Right.
obviously not everybody agrees with, and that is the test that they're making with a lot of people. Is they're trying to say, do you believe that Jesus is the king of the universe? If you can't
Right.
affirm that, you're not part of the group. That's what I think
Yeah.
they're mainly doing, but obviously it's been used just to say this person. I think it's become a bit like the yellow star. If you can't affirm that Christ is king, you've got a yellow star on you now.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's going on.
Yeah. Okay,
It's like we need
I
to
gotta go.
boycott this.
I gotta go, guys. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad.
Yeah, thanks for
glad I hopped
dropping
on.
in.
Yeah, and Jonathan, thank you for making things, as you said, East Coast. I'm in Ontario, so
Yeah, I'm across the lake.
Agreed. Okay, bye,
Yeah,
guys.
East Coast works for me too.
Yeah, good meeting you, Dre, too. All right, bye.
Yeah, good meeting you, man. Have a good one.
Dre, do you go by Dre?
Like my friends call me Dre, so I'm fine with that. And Andre, Dre, anything's fine. I don't really care. It's all
Gotcha. There's been some comments. We can catch up on some of those.
Sweet.
Sherry says, is going from the top of that chart, the conspiracy theory chart, to the bottom, an example of reciprocal narrowing. Smiley face. I'm not probably as up on that. I don't know, is that Vervaekian language to be able to
I don't even know what it means.
say much to that? Reciprocal narrowing? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm going to guess it means like honing in on some kind of a truth. Maybe Sherry.
I would say it's more like overfitting, like when you're talking about data. I like when you were talking about making connections between dots.
Yeah, overfitting. That's right. That's exactly what it is.
I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. There's some YouTube guy, says Cassandra, that says every woman celebrity is actually transgender. Huge if true.
I think I've heard that. I have a friend who is very, he's very into that conspiracy theory in particular. He thinks like if a girl has a strong jawline, that they are like a Sandra Bullock type, that they are definitely a man.
Yeah, I think that's just way too the current thing for that to be legit, because you would expect that to have been much more prevalent in history. But all of a sudden now we're, so wound around the axle of trans stuff that like we see that everywhere. I think that's another part of conspiracy theories, is like it requires a frame of a particular attunement to a pattern.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that just feeds right back into our model overfitting, hypothesis here. McMosov, pardon me if I'm butchering that, says, I'm catching up about 24 minutes back. Irony cuts both ways. That's why it's important to LARP hard and commit to the bit. I think that there's some truth to that. I think, I think that's how you really do, like we joke about the person wearing colorful shirts with a hot dog on it being kind of like obviously joking, but as a way to sort of ease into a new identity. But I think we do that kind of stuff all the time, and that's like you got to fake it. You always have to fake it before you make it. I think that's almost always true. Sherry says, I think about the philo-Semitism we were talking about earlier. They love them as dispensationalists. This is loving them for them to get something for themselves, namely the second coming, right? So people who think that the Jews have to do something in order for Jesus to come back, which is kind of a hilarious conceit. Like, God just sitting on his hands waiting for the Jews to do something.
That whole thing. Do you know about that whole dispensational thing?
Yeah. I grew up amongst them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been exposed to most types of Christian eschatologies of varying degrees. It's only gotten more sane as I've gotten older. So McMossov says, I think that the proper understanding of conspiracy theories is as the opposite of epistemic humility. People get more and more certain of what they think is going on. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know that it's like, I mean, epistemic humility is, I think, an important concept, but I think that like you can take that too far, where you just kind of refuse, you sort of throw up your hands and say, well, I can't really know anything, right? So then you've become agnostic, versus, you know, trying to actually seek out something true, and then you got to hold on to something. Trey asked if we ever heard about the Norway reduction camps. Reduction? I don't know that word.
Re-education, I think he's trying to say.
Yeah, for Muslim immigrants. No, but probably a good idea. Sense certainty versus the sin of certainty. Conspiracy is a kind of response to being lied to. Yeah, I think that probably that fuels the fire for sure.
There's a joke that this guy called Nick Mullen makes where he says there was always that guy at school who told you that if you peed in the pool, that there would be like a streak of color that followed you, like your urine would turn like a blue or something, right? And one day you actually try that, nothing happens, and then you're just like, oh fuck the government, dude. It's kind of true that you do fall into it after being lied to, you know. So I don't know.
Trey says, I probably also don't think much of Christ as a king coming from a Jehovah's Witness background. You know, that's
It's
yeah.
weird though, right?
Well, like I guess I'm trying to think of like how quote unquote biblical
That
the
doesn't
Christ
go
king
with the
concept
actual
is.
New Testament. Yeah,
It's more of a tradition
because
laid
there
on.
are like many scriptures where it refers to Christ as the king. Like for instance, on the piece of wood, it says INRI, King Christ, the King of the Jews.
You know,
Right?
a Jesuit once told me a joke. He said, "You know what INRI means?"
Well,
And I said, "What?" He said, "I'm nailed right in."
there we go.
From
It is,
Jesuits.
yeah. Not surprising.
Expect nothing less. Yeah. Wait, isn't most of the Bible waiting for the Jews to do something? Well, I mean,
Kind of.
maybe
It
waiting
is.
for God to do something.
I mean, it's God kind of
It's usually,
knowing that the Jews are gonna
yeah.
like not do the right thing. I
Trey
do, yes.
watch
I did
Kundan.
when it. Yeah.
Yeah, Christ is king, but Jesus didn't start ruling until 1914, says Trey. What happened in 1914? What am I missing?
They believe that like the second coming was in 1914 and it was a failed prediction. So then they said, no, it's actually 1918, and then that was a failed prediction. Then it went to like 1945, and it just kept changing. But then what they ended up saying was, no, actually, the end time, something happened in heaven. That's how we know that it's like the end. Like they spiritualized it all. I don't know. It was just failed predictions. So, which is, by the way, we ought to stone if we were going by like the Old Testament. We would stone those type of people who make false prophecies. So, I don't know about that, man. Yeah, World War One. They did basically put it to World War One.
Yeah, World War One. So I've been watching these like Noahide videos on YouTube that are like by crazy evangelical fundamentalist types. So like basically like anti Noahide videos, and it's kind of funny because of course they think that their prediction, of course, is that like the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, is going to be the Antichrist. And so it's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy that like when that happens, they're like almost guaranteed to just not accept it because they're going to like necessarily see it as like I think for some people like Jesus himself could come back and they'd be like, this is the Antichrist. Like how are they even like it's almost like they're so ready to be lied to or to like they're so vigilant for some kind of a falsehood.
Yeah.
And like a next level kind of falsehood, right? Like, you know, the kind of like, you know, how could we possibly see through this? It's going to be so deceptive, right? And it's like,
Most of the saints say that if Christ were to turn up today, the leaders of the church would just probably kill him.
well, that was Dostoevsky's. That was the Grand Inquisitor narrative, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know, but I'm assuming that's
I think
a
that's
pretty clear narrative just in Russian culture in general, that is what would happen. Like, people are very Pharisaic, if I want to use the term, in terms of how they view the faith. So yes, if Jesus was to come back, they probably would kill him, unfortunately. But yeah, they are sort of, I mean, in terms of like end times prophecy, if we go by what the fathers say, we are expecting a guy to come back, and it is not going to be Jesus, and then Jesus comes afterwards. But when Jesus comes, it's like that's the end. Like, it's not that he comes a little bit and then goes away and then comes back or whatever the dispensationalists say.
yeah. Because then he's got to make up his mind. He keeps coming and going and coming and going, and it's got to be done. All right, Trey says, okay, I have a new Jacobism, but it may be anti-Semitic. Well, roll the dice, Trey. Take your chances.
Go for it. I say go for it.
I'm not going to read it though if
it genuinely is like,
if it's bad, Trey. I'm going to disavow.
Anything else from oh no, that's okay. Come on, Trey, give us some more stuff. I wonder what it could be. I'm
going to post the link again.
I don't think that's necessarily. I honestly feel like Jacob would just laugh at that.
God created Christianity to humble the Jews. I don't know. I think the Jews have been plenty humbled.
Like the classical sense of the world, yeah. Like, if the classical sense is to be kicked out of your country and then like exiled, then yes, I feel that is basically humbling. So
I can't remember the last time the Jews had like a mega flex, where it was just like, wow. Right? I mean, they've been exiled for a long time. They keep getting taken over.
I don't think the Jews as a collective have ever had a mega flex, but there definitely have been a lot of rich Jews. I mean, that's not weird to say. Trey
says, look, times are weird. Or look, times are weird. I don't know how to. I need more punctuation, or does I say, look, times are weird, or I don't know what look times are. Look times or no times. Trey says, well, there, with bad grammar, not special.
Come on, Trey, man, you can do better than this. Do better.
It's like Zoomer grammar here. They're not special. I think that's just not true. Everybody knows they're special. Trey says, how many people say they are the child of who?
Well, I think that would be everybody, yeah.
No, well, I mean, everybody who believes in who.
I mean, I don't think it's even a non-Christian thing to say that everybody is the child of the name.
No, I think I don't think Christians disagree with that. Well, okay, now chosen by the name. Well, that's different.
Yeah, that's where we would disagree. I think.
Do Muslims think that they're chosen, or do
yes, they
do. Chosen in the same? Chosen in the same way that.
Yeah, they think that they're like the final testament, don't they? They think they're the final revelation.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, David's back. Can't resist.
Guys, it's happening real time. Yeah. It's happening real time.
I'll be back in just a second. Keep going, guys.
Yeah, Trey is a troll. So in the middle of all these conversations about people doing things just as a joke, or actually because they legitimately mean things, and trying to explore ideas, or just being a little shit.
Yeah,
Trey, you're doing exactly what this conversation needed. It's really happening. You guys were addressing what he said as though it was a legitimate concern and not coming from Trey.
No. Trey's the spice of life, and he's a foil.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah,
foil, and he's a useful idiot. No offense, Trey, but
He would take no offense to that.
No, it's Trey comes in and asks all the questions everybody, is thinking maybe but is afraid to ask or something.
Yeah.
So
you state it as a joke, and then it's okay if you do that.
Yeah,
Like
no,
actually useful.
no. Trey is a good faith actor, and he says his IQ fluctuates from 80 to 120, which means that basically your IQ is 100 and you're totally average. You're a midwit by your own self admission. So I don't know if that can be trusted. Does a midwit know? Like the Dunning-Kruger effect says that Trey's probably underestimating his like 125 IQ.
It reminds me of what is that? What is the name of the meme where you have like the guy with the warped head and the guy with the mega brain? Like
I don't know what the name of that one is, but it's like the bell curve, right? With the three guys.
Yeah. And they're all, both sides are saying the same thing.
Right, but different understandings, but like then there's the midwit in the middle. Yeah.
So Trey is claiming it is the bell curve, the male bell curve, which is the highest IQ and the lowest IQ.
The extremes always agree, basically. It's basically horseshoe theory, right?
I think Trey plays the part of the midwit in the middle, though, like just for shits and giggles.
Anybody who's genuinely intelligent loves to act like they're dumb.
All right, I'll be back for real next time. Hold on.
Or at least I like to act dumb. I think it's fun. Oh, you're muted again, David. Trey's like, amen. Yeah, acting retarded is. I mean, acting silly, like a silly Billy, is fun. David, you need to unmute, I think, if you want to. Subtle, is that Arab? Are you of Arabic?
I'm not. Where does it look like Arabic? I don't know where.
Because it says I pronounced it as Basattil, which it sounds like an Arabic name.
Great job. I'm Maltese. Maltese were
that is kind of a little bit.
Yeah. It's 2/3 Arabic or 2/3 Semitic, 1/3 Latin. Romantic, if you can imagine a language like that. So
yeah, I have a Maltese friend, and it's very much that.
Yes, yeah. And I met a guy. I met a guy who was Assyrian, and his accent was almost identical to a Maltese accent. If I were to do a Maltese accent, there are people in the Middle East who also do it like this when they try to speak English.
How do you actually pronounce your last name then?
So I say Buzatil, but my dad is one of 3 brothers, and all 3 of them pronounce it different. So if you were actually in Malta, it would be Busutil.
Okay.
And one of the theories as to what my name means is Abu Satin in Arabic is father of 60. So may have referred to like a military leader. Either that or my grandma was quite a fertile woman.
Yeah.
Abu Satin, father of 60. 60.
Wow.
It's too many babies.
Whoever that was.
Yeah. Well, so blessed that it became a curse. It's kind of one of those Midas situations at that point.
That's interesting. And I mean, I've looked at the Maltese alphabet, and a lot of it is just Arabic in terms of even the way you sort of write and stuff is kind of Arabic too, isn't it?
Okay, so if you look at Maltese is written in Roman characters, but then uses the letters different. So that uses the letter X to make an R sound. Like if you'll see signs and you'll just be like, what is that saying? It's like, it says Rendi. And you're like, it doesn't say Rendi, it says Zendi. What are you talking about? It's a mess because we have sounds that are Arabic sounds, but use English letters to write them.
Do you have an ein sound?
I don't know if we have an ein. It's been a very long time. I basically only knew how to swear. Say hello, I'm doing well, and how to how to swear. That's all I remember. But we would like, there was a ch, there's a ta, right? In Hebrew, a tzadeh. Yeah. I'm wondering what part Cassandra clipped.
Yeah, what I missed? Did it get spicy?
No, we just started
Did Dre say something?
Dre, if he was a white guy, I'd assume he was being racist towards me. But he started making assumptions about my racial background.
Yeah, I'm much more relaxed having Dre around here.
Yeah, Dre and every single TSA agent I've ever encountered made assumptions about my racial background.
I just the Busatil sound or Busatil sounded very, I don't know, just it sounded Arabic, and I was like, "Whoa,
no.
interesting."
It's in its origin. It's just weird because it's once removed. It's Arabic once removed. So
yeah.
Yeah.
No, you don't look that like Semitic. You look like, actually, yeah. I guess you could go for like a Syrian. Yeah,
I get a lot of things. Especially in the summer, depending on how much facial hair, what I do with my hair, and what section of summer it is, I get a lot of things. So I was in an ethnic grocery store once, and this woman walks up to me and starts speaking Punjabi to me, and I go, "What?" She points at me and goes, "Punjabi?" And I go, "No," and she goes, "Ugh." Like that. And I knew exactly what she meant, Trey, was, how dare you have that face and not speak this language? You, sir, either learn the language or get another face.
Pretty much, yeah. No, because like you look like one of my family members, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of like, Punjabis are really kind of weird in the sense that you can have one family that has like somebody who looks Greek, and then somebody who looks like they're just Indian, and they're related, like they're brother and sister.
Well, and then I dated a girl who was Assyrian, like I was saying, and so I went to something at a Middle Eastern Baptist church, and this guy approached me and just went, "So, David, did you convert from Islam?" I was like, "No, I grew up Catholic. I don't know what you're talking." Like, it was just, I understand. I am ethnically ambiguous. So people just throw stuff on me. Actually, within these conversations about race, first time I encountered racism was like as a joke, because like when I was younger, I had a speech impediment. Speaking of men having problems communicating, speech impediments are almost entirely male. I had a speech impediment when I was younger, and people thought I had an accent. They thought that was just, it's, Dave, he's, I guess that's his background. Okay, fine.
My 5-year-old son watches a lot of Peppa Pig and Bluey and stuff. So like, these are English and British and Australian, I think, maybe New Zealand, but I think it's Australia. So he, of course, then repeats what he hears, and so he has a lot of words that he uses that are the Queen's English, and it's or the King's English, I should say now.
King's English,
and it's hilarious.
Like what? Like rubbish.
He'll use some words that are the phrases and words that they would use, but also just the pronunciation. So
carriage.
See, I went in a terrible direction where he was starting to use the C word, and you had to explain to him, like, look, that's not okay in North America. It's fine.
He knows. Yeah, no, my 5-year-old knows the F word, and he rarely uses it, but when he does, it's like the most inopportune time in front of other people, and and he knows he's being funny. So he only saves it for the times where it's going to get maximal, like,
Oh, that's great.
and like he knows when it's going to be funny too. Like he knows when the adults are going to like be kind of like, oh my gosh, he really said that, but they're going to laugh. It's mortifying.
Yeah, I get Trey now chiding me. Trey pretending to be the prudent one, of course.
The C word, yeah. Trey says, I say that around my friends who are girls. Yeah, Trey,
don't.
Maybe you have to have friends that are girls first.
My buddy works with people with disabilities, and on people's files who have been in the system for a very long time, they will be diagnosed as a moron. It'll say in a medical file, moron, cretin, idiot, because all of those terms used to refer to specific amounts of what your IQ level is. If you're beyond this, then you're an idiot, and if you're that, then you're a cretin. All these things that are now insults.
I feel like cretin sounds so much better in the British accent when you're just like, oh, you cretin, you absolute cretin.
Yeah.
I don't know. Moron is like I feel like that's more of an American thing to say moron.
My favorite insult is dumb idiot. Because you dumb idiot. It's just to say
Doubling up.
Yeah, doubling up and not
truly, you are a dumb idiot.
yes. Truly, I say to you, you're an idiot.
It's kind of Punjabi as well, because we do that thing where we double up words. I don't know if it's just an Eastern thing, but like a lot of languages seem to double up on words if they're like emphasizing or referring to, like for instance, if you were going to say anything that's an idiot or idiot-like, you would just double the word. I don't know if that's done in Hebrew as well, where they're trying to.
Yeah, so there's no. There in original Hebrew, there's no vowel markers, but there's also no punctuation. So you indicate something like anger, an exclamation mark, you do something twice. So an example of this is that in English, Satan says, "You will not surely die." He literally in Hebrew says, "You're not gonna die." Right? And I'm like, that's funny because we still use that, right? My mom's gonna kill me. She's not gonna kill you. I mean, yeah, you're gonna.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I always find little things like that are similar across languages are very interesting to me.
Yeah, and oh man, it's difficult not to read things as like examples of crying or angry in the Bible. My God, why have you forsaken me? When David finds out that his son has died, oh, Absalom, my son. Or I can't even remember the order of it because it's all confused, but he says everything within there more than once as a way of communicating. Yeah, this is very upsetting. David is crying.
So, dudes, in the Discord, Father Eric shared a link to Trent Horn's video that dropped today called "Is Saying Christ the King Anti-Semitic?" It's about 20 minutes. Should we play it?
Time. Yeah, let's do a review.
Should we review it?
Live review.
All right, let me see if I can. This will be my first YouTube presenting, so give me a moment.
I've just realized it's got my old logo on there. Damn, need to update that.
Oh no. I have to like allow it and then restart. Have you guys shared before?
No, but I can give it a go. I don't know how fast my internet will be though. So
Hold on. Actually, David, how much time do you have?
I have time.
Here.
I'm working in the background. If you hear clicking, I'm doing stuff for work.
yeah, I'm also working too.
Yeah. So
I,
the question isn't how much time I have. The question is how much am I actually paying attention?
Yeah. Here, I'm gonna paste this into the private chat. If you, because you already you shared an image, right? Or was that your screen?
Yeah, I shared my screen. I have. I do the judges conversation on.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So I haven't set up my Chrome to allow, or my Mac to allow that yet. So rather than having to like end the stream and stuff, I put the YouTube to Trent Horn's video in the private chat. If you wouldn't mind running that, and then.
To be fair, would it be better to actually end the stream and then start a new one and just have it as the review?
You guys tell me what. I don't care.
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back, and then I can decide.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might just be cleaner in some sort of way.
I was thinking for a second also of like these conversations about what words mean. I find it particularly funny, like thinking back to words for disabled. It's just like literally the word retarded is the same, is tardy, delayed. Like it literally just means delayed. That's all that word means, and has no more punch than just saying he's a little slow. Like saying retarded is identical to the word slow in its meaning. But I feel like the way that the word sounds, the hitting of stuff, it just sounds more like a curse word. And so takes on that connotation. And I get obsessed with words. And me and my wife will joke around about things that aren't swear words that sound like swear words. So an example is dillweed. Like if you buy dill, it just says dillweed. And we will try to figure out what is the insult. So if you are in the spice section, there was something that just said spice bag. And I'm like, spice bag feels like an insult. That feels like something that you would call someone who's Punjabi. Is you could be like, oh, that guy's a spice bag, right? Like,
I mean, kind of. Right? It works.
Yeah, it works. My favorite one though is my wife had a book that was just animals of North America, and there's a kind of salamander, and its name is the common five-lined skink. And I'm like, that feels like such an insult to a woman to call them you common five-lined skink. It's like, it's just a salamander.
It's one letter away from being the actual thing.
But also the word common is in there. I love it.
All right, the verdict. I think the verdict is just go ahead and play it. Just play it here. We'll just go through it.
Okay.
And you could play it at like 1.25, even maybe.
Does everybody have enough IQ to comprehend at 1.25 speed?
Well, it's more about the people who might listen to this later at 2x, and then it's like you're really taking it in overdrive.
Yeah. Let me just for that, I think we should do it 1.25. Yeah, you're right.
Share screen. Where are you?
Somebody mentioned also to just make sure to check the include audio button, which I'll take their word for it.
It normally, the last time I did it on its own. You hear that? Oh, no, sorry. I didn't. Okay, bring it to the stage.
Wire ended their relationship.
Could you hear that?
Yep, I can hear it.
I'm going to expose myself to not understand things. Is it? Do you actually want me to go faster?
No, we could do it at normal. I mean, I'm also kind of working, so I'm half paying attention, and yeah, it's okay. 2x, no.
I'm going to go to 0.25, barely
Great.
noticeable.
That's
Just-
right. Just a little bit of speed. The cocaine version.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's
Just
Okay.
2 lines. That's
You got to hit.
Last week, Candace Owens and the Daily Wire ended their relationship. And there's been a debate about a phrase that's become popular on the internet since then. Christ is king. On the one side, you have people saying this is an affirmation of the Christian faith and a desire to not give into secular culture. On the other side, you have people saying the phrase Christ is king is anti-Semitic, or it can be anti-Semitic, and it's being used by others to express contempt for Jewish people. So let's take a closer look. Right at the outset, we should agree it is true Christ is king. This is not a bad phrase. I've used it myself several times to communicate the truth that society is not immune to God's commands. So society, any country, can't defend things like legal abortion by an appeal to separation of church and state. Christ is king over all. But that does not mean every single use of the phrase Christ is king is good. Some people who use this phrase are taking the Lord's name in vain, or they're using Christianity as a prop to promote their own sinful behavior. One example would be Andrew Tate, a self-described Muslim who is admitted to pimping women out and is being charged with rape and sex trafficking by the Romanian government. He writes, "As a Muslim, it warms my heart to see the resurgence of spirited Christian declarations. Christ is king. And I pray Christianity regains its strength and protects its societies against the pervasive and constant erosion of morality by the devotees of Satan. If you accept everything, you stand for nothing." This is a bunch of self-serving garbage. And my favorite reply to this, along with all the actual Muslims who are offended by Tate saying Christ is king, is from Byzantine Scotus, who said, "If we treated Christ as king, you'd be in prison." So not every use of the phrase is good. If the phrase Christ is king becomes popular among a group of people who celebrate certain evils, then an otherwise good phrase can become problematic. And you can question the motives of that group of people who say it.
All lives matter. Black lives matter. All lives matter. Black lives matter. We all agree on those sentiments equally, right? In no situation, because we know that those things are true, we can say them in any situation and there's no controversy whatsoever. Christ is king. Black lives matter. Sure, whatever. No political connection, right?
Also, with like people like Andrew Tate saying, "Oh, Christ is king," he's saying that because he worships power, just the idea of power itself. He likes the idea of just people being strong. Not necessarily even if it's going to help him immediately, because obviously Christianity and Islam are not friendly, really. It's just the idea that he can profit off of the idea of masculinity. And if he's promoting the idea of power, that increases the idea of masculinity, and then he's going to make more money in the long run. So he's not. I don't even necessarily think. Yeah, he's just grifting.
Yeah, and I don't want to just repeat everything that I had said to Jacob, but this is an exact example of someone who is using words to mean multiple things. Like I don't even think Andrew Tate actually is a Muslim. Like I think like, what do you mean by that word? What do you mean by all of the labels that you're putting on yourself? If I don't trust you, then I straight up don't trust you. So I don't trust the way that Andrew Tate would use Christ as king. And because of that reason, I also don't trust the way that he claims to be a Muslim. Right. And what I actually said to Jacob yesterday was Allah Akbar just means God is great. And in Maltese, Allah is how you refer to God, like God in the Bible is like, Malta is almost entirely Catholic, and God is referred to as Allah.
I would actually dispute that, because I feel like Ilahi is the correct term for the God in Arabic. Allah is like it's Aramaic Allaha degraded into Allah, but I think Ilahi is probably the correct way, because that is Eloah from Hebrew. That would be the correct.
But also, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Dre, that there was a pagan deity who went by Allah as his name before Islam existed.
Well, there was Lah, which is a moon god, and there was Sin, which is a moon god, but I don't think that's where it comes from. I mean, I have heard Christian I think it's kind of cringe to use those arguments about the moon, and it might be some of that involved, but I think it's more just a degradation of the Aramaic Allah.
Sorry, is it then just a coincidence that the symbol for Islam is the moon?
No, they're just desert dwellers, so they worship the moon because it's cold, and the sun is hot, so they don't like it. I think it's more like that rather than.
Okay, yeah. I like that as well, where it's just like, this is why light isn't always good. You guys you are forgetting about people who live in the desert.
Yeah, they just it's too hot for them.
Okay.
For example,
sorry, Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, even despite the language, I mean, I do think that probably when Muslims say Allah, they mean the same thing you mean and I mean when we say God, think of God. So I mean, it's
it's changed now. It's become the same meaning for everybody.
Well,
just the one high God, basically. Well,
and specifically, it's interesting too because Muhammad believes that he is not contradicting the Bible. He has never read the Bible. He doesn't know that he is in fact contradicting it everywhere. That the Bible is totally fine with someone being the son of God. Israel is the son of God. Solomon is the son of God. Jesus is the son of God. In Islam, that is blasphemy. Do not say that God has a son. Do not attribute partners or say that he has a son.
It's blasphemy in Judaism too, to say that.
No, it is not. It is not blasphemy.
To say monogenes, like as in uniquely begotten.
Right.
Not uniquely begotten. That's the blasphemy part. Anybody is a son of God, but to say there's a unique son of God that nobody else is, that's the blasphemy part.
But in Islam, you can't even say that we are God's children. We are not God's children. You can't say we are all
like
God's
slaves. Slaves to God.
Yeah. We're his servants. That's the highest our relationship is, and anything higher than that is blasphemy by nature.
Let's press on.
Sorry to just take it into a random
Arabic takbir.
Is he going in that direction? Amazing.
Or the phrase Allahu Akbar, it roughly means God is great or God is greater. The word Allah is just the Arabic word for God. It was used by Arabic Christians long before Muhammad preached his religion of Islam. Arabic Christians still use the word Allah to refer to God.
Arabic-speaking Christians say words like Insha'Allah, MashaAllah, Wallah, since Allah means God. Or are these words too much associated with Islam? There are words that are culturally appropriated by very specific groups, especially in the Middle East. There's actually nothing wrong with saying Insha'Allah. Even as a Christian, I use that term often. What it really means is whatever the Lord wills. So the word Allah in Arabic, it just means God or Lord, right?
So there's nothing wrong with the phrase Allahu Akbar because Arabic Christians use this phrase to say God is great. The problem is that some Muslims have co-opted the phrase for sinful purposes, like terrorism. They'll exclaim Allahu Akbar before committing an act of terror. So if a certain group of people who downplay, mock, or even endorse the sin of terrorism like to use the phrase Allahu Akbar, then that needs to be called out, even though there's nothing wrong with saying God is great in Arabic. Likewise, if groups of people who downplay, mock, or even endorse the sin of anti-Semitism use the phrase Christ is king, then that too needs to be called out, even though there's nothing wrong with saying Christ is king. Now, almost everyone agrees anti-Semitism is sinful. They just disagree on what counts as anti-Semitism. For example, nearly everyone agrees that hating people because of their genetics and trying to exterminate them is evil. But critics who are accused of anti-Semitism often say they don't do that, or they're not arguing for that, so they are not guilty of the sin of anti-Semitism. However, there's more to anti-Semitism than just the most extreme examples. Now, I want to be clear that not every charge of anti-Semitism is true. I have been accused of anti-Semitism for simply comparing the dehumanization of unborn children that leads to abortion to the dehumanization of Jewish people that led to the Holocaust. It is not anti-Semitic to be critical of the Jewish faith by pointing out that it contains falsehoods, such as the Jewish faith's denial of Jesus Christ's messianic and divine status. It's not anti-Semitic to be critical of the modern nation of Israel. And it's not anti-Semitic to simply offend Jewish people or their sensibilities, provided what you're saying is the truth done in charity. For example, in 2021, Pope Francis gave a homily on St. Paul's letter to the Galatians, where he said of the Mosaic Law, which is the foundational text of Judaism, that the law, however, does not give life. It does not offer the fulfillment of the promise because it is not capable of being able to fulfill it. Those who seek life need to look to the promise and to its fulfillment in Christ." End quote. Leaders of Judaism
can we
in
just
Israel
pause it here?
criticize these remarks.
So I like what he was saying about, anti-Semitism is a sin. Yeah, racism is a sin. But I think we need to balance that with, if you're an Orthodox Christian, you have to understand that ethnophiletism, or extreme loyalty to one's race, like having ethnic enclaves and stuff like that, that's also considered a heresy. So you have to balance it. There's like a middle path where you can't be like, you can't hate other people, but you can't love other people, love your own people to the point of excluding others. I think you have to walk that middle path, is what I'm trying to say.
I want to ask a controversial question. Do you think that people groups have character? Like have a character?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Where if you grow up around, like, it's funny because there's jokes that I grew up around Filipinos. And so there's jokes that I make around Filipinos that Filipinos love. And there will be a white person nearby being like, is this okay? Is this all right? What is he doing? Right.
Well, I mean, having a character is different though than that being an essential character. Right. So, I mean, I guess like in the sense that do people have a culture?
Yeah.
Yes. Is that culture essential to those people? Maybe not always.
I actually don't know if that would be the Jewish position, because the idea of the Jewish soul is very much essential.
Well, and this gets into, again, into other people who are actually anti-Semitic. Someone like E. Michael Jones, who wrote something called The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit.
Yeah.
Where literally his idea is that, that Jews, in rejecting Christ, that puts into them the spirit of rebellion, and that's why there's so many Bolsheviks who were Jewish.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like he creates this no true Scotsman type of
right
character, where, because I don't think he thinks of like Hasidic religious Jews, for instance. He thinks about the Bolshevik, the Hollywood conspiracy.
Right.
These are people who he would not, I think, consider to be religious or God-fearing in any way.
Right.
And so it's like, if those are just Jews who are not good Jews,
right,
then it's either a straw man or he's sort of made up this imaginary boogeyman of a Jew. And that's not to defend him. But I feel like he's not a great example because he's kind of just too crazy.
Well, I use that example though because he's a popular person online. He's for some people he was a pre-Jordan Peterson. He has a book called Logos Rising.
Yeah.
These are people. I think, again, it's almost like that ridiculous conspiracy chart that I showed at the beginning.
Yeah. Sometimes
a bad representative is a good representative if people feel that person represents them. Like,
yeah. I see what you're saying.
Where oh man, yeah, that's an interesting thing too, because I feel like racism and stereotypes and engaging in all these things is whether or not something is a good representation. And it's just like, what if sometimes I understand the importance of steel manning and not straw manning, but sometimes the important person, the popular person, is a straw man, right? Joe Biden and Donald Trump are straw men. If you're actually going to address what people are finding compelling, you have to address these straw men, and you can't just say, well, they don't count. It's just like, I'm sorry, it's terrible, but these are the people that people say represent them.
It's a fair point.
Okay, I'm gonna hit play.
Let's go.
But the Pope was just saying what the New Testament teaches in Galatians 3:21. For if a law had been given which could make alive, then righteousness would indeed be by the law. The Mosaic law does not give spiritual or eternal life with God. Only Christ's sacrifice can give us that kind of life. It's not anti-Semitic to say that all people, including Jewish people, should become Catholic and receive the gift of eternal life. However, the Second Vatican Council condemns racial hatred and unbending ideologies that continue to divide men and place them in opposing camps. And also, with respect to the fundamental rights of the person, every type of discrimination, whether social or cultural, whether based on sex, race, color, social condition, language, or religion, is to be overcome and eradicated as contrary to God's intent. So racism is evil, as is anti-Semitism. But what is the true anti-Semitism that's evil? The easiest way to spot it would be to just replace the word Jews with the word Catholics. If the actions become a sinful form of bigotry when Catholics are involved, then they are also a sinful form of bigotry when they're done against Jews. So, for example, it is not anti-Semitic to argue Judaism is false, or to help Jews convert to Christianity, or to criticize the nation of Israel's political decisions, because it's not anti-Catholic bigotry to argue Catholicism is false, or to help Catholics convert to Protestantism, or to criticize the Vatican's political decisions. I think Protestants are wrong to reject Catholicism, and it's wrong for them to help people leave the church, but I would not say they are being bigoted or prejudicial or anti-Catholic in that sense. Likewise, a Jew should be able to say he thinks I'm wrong about Judaism, but I am not a bigot if I help Jewish people become Christian. However,
This came up when the Passion of the Christ was in theaters because people found parts of the movie anti-Semitic, which are just quotes from the Gospel of John.
Which might be anti-Semitic.
Which might be, but also, which some people found anti-Semitic, but also Mel Gibson was the maker of the movie, who also has said anti-Semitic things. So he didn't include every line from the Gospel of John, but he did include those words. And then also, when you're casting people in specific roles, how large of a nose do you cast people with? How are you, even in your casting, making specific decisions? All that stuff was going on. This is. I feel like that lines up in an interesting way because that was said. The movie's anti-Semitic.
One of my past episodes, which I'll link below, I showed how anti-Catholicism is, as the Protestant author Philip Jenkins said, the last acceptable prejudice. Jenkins himself called it the thinking man's anti-Semitism, though as we've seen in stories about Ivy League campuses, anti-Semitism is enjoying a resurgence among the cultural elite. So here's a quick survey of past sinful anti-Catholic bigotry, and how if you swap Catholics for Jews, you get clear examples of anti-Semitic bigotry that is incompatible with Catholicism. These would include the following. First, cartoons that depict Catholics as subversive revolutionaries working on behalf of the Vatican, including as an octopus trying to take over the world. If it's wrong to slander Catholics with these kinds of globalist conspiracies,
David, can you pause this for just a
then
second?
it's wrong to smear Jews with similar.
So it's interesting that it's sort of this video is taking a turn for like, I guess you think the song is about you, because I feel like he's using this to like now turn this into like a
this is my real problem is this
anti-Catholicism. Yeah. Here, let's talk about anti-Semitism, but like look at how bad the Catholics have it too. Anyway,
and I mean we're also living in a time period where literally people will say it's not racism if it's against white people. What does he mean? Anti-Catholic is the last permissible. It's just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like Pete Holmes does a whole bit. The comedian Pete Holmes does a whole bit on "It's a me, Mario," and he's just like an immigrant struggling with the language, and he's just like, "I'm a Luigi. I'm gonna win." He's like, "This is not controversial. No one is gonna call anyone about me doing this voice. It's completely fine."
Yeah. Anyway, you can keep going. Keep going.
Kinds of conspiracies. Unjust discrimination doesn't include simply being killed or imprisoned or denied a job. You can unjustly discriminate against a group. You can harm a people group by simply spreading lies about them that motivates others to commit violence against that group. For example, past conspiracies about the Catholic Church led hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan to burn down Catholic parishes because they thought that those churches had a secret weapons cache in their basement for the coming revolution spurred on by the Pope. And history is replete with examples of Jewish synagogues being burned down and Jews being killed in response to similar conspiracy theories. Number two, complaining that there are too many Catholics in institutions of power, such as at one time there being 7 members of the U.S. Supreme Court having been raised Catholic.
I think whatever a religion is, it has its own dogma. The law is totally different. When you read your speeches, the conclusion one draws is that the dogma lives loudly within you.
If it's bigoted to say there are too many Catholics in a certain institution, then it's also bigoted to say there are too many Jews in Hollywood or Wall Street, for example. Number three, saying Catholics are prone to certain vices.
Sorry, this is something that this is a struggle all over, because I really think that within leftism, it becomes very difficult not to become anti-Semitic. Like, there's a lot of anti-Semitic groups on the left, and they use the exact same logic that speaks of white supremacy and white institutional patriarchy and all this other stuff. They use the identical logic of misrepresentation towards Jews, right? And
Yeah.
so if you do think that that's a legitimate argument, then that's gonna make its way over. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen some of that stuff where there are groups that are like, yes, in the same way there's a ton of white people, there's also a specific kind of white people.
Like being drunk, aggressive, being an uneducated immigrant, or the more recent stereotype of the pedophile priest. There are, of course, individual Catholics who conform to these stereotypes, just as there are individual Jews who conform to Jewish stereotypes. But if it's wrong to say that Catholics as a group embody these vices, if that's prejudicial bigotry, then it's also wrong and bigoted to say that all Jews conform to stereotypes, or that Jews are uniquely responsible for various social ills.
There's a guy who looked up every single one of these images. How much do you think he enjoyed that part of his job? It's just like, hey, could you give me that meme? Which one? You know, the one with the hook nose and the shifty eyes. Could you find me that one? You know what I mean? Like, in all these conversations about who was it? There was someone who was caught with child porn. It was a famous person, and they said, "I'm doing a documentary on the problem of this." That's why I had all those images.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I was gonna say, yeah, Trent Horn probably just has this in his downloads folder, so he
yeah.
it's easy to call him up.
Yeah, give me the one where there are a bunch of octopi.
When many racial groups are involved in those ills, like pornography or abortion. Number four, saying Catholics are so bad for the social order, and so it's justified for the government to forcibly expel them, such as in the year 1700 when the Massachusetts colony passed the Act Against Jesuits and Popish Priests, which banned Catholic clergy from the colony, or to at least ban Catholics from doing things like holding political office. Anti-Semites do the same thing when they say Jews should be forcibly expelled in the present because past governments unjustly exiled and mistreated them. Using past mistreatment of Jews to justify current mistreatment is as wrong as using past anti-Catholicism to justify current anti-Catholicism. It also doesn't matter if the church did this in the past. Not everything the church did in its historical practice was good, and the church fathers and theologians were not infallible in their opinions on these matters. For example, St. Thomas Aquinas said, "The Jews, by reason of their fault, are sentenced to perpetual servitude, and thus the lords of the lands in which they dwell may take things from them as though they were their own." A doctor of the church endorsing an injustice against a certain group of people does not make those acts just. Some theologians and doctors of the church made mistakes in judgment or operated under mistaken cultural norms, and we can learn from them by not repeating
They
their
weren't the
mistakes.
church.
You can appreciate a Catholic author.
What was that?
Because they weren't the church, but you carry on.
Barb.
Yeah, I'm finding this particularly difficult because I do feel what is coming up out of me as they're talking about some of this stuff. Because in some of these situations, I'm like, what if that is a good representation of stuff? Like, it's funny because, I have a friend who's Jordanian, and someone was talking about things which were offensive. And what, if you know Middle Eastern people, they have a completely different definition. So someone was saying, oh, it's offensive that the beginning song in Aladdin was changed, the Arabian Nights, because there's a line that says they'll cut off your ear if they don't like your face. And it was updated to it's hot and immense and the heat is intense. It was something like that, where it's just like they just try to make it completely non-offensive. And my friend who was Middle Eastern was just like, I like the other one better. It's funnier. I was like, okay. Doesn't find it insulting at all.
Yeah, Zizek has a good bit about like racism amongst minority groups and like
while he does this.
Yeah, and like
yeah
deals with the cocaine habit or something.
It's not racism. It is solidarity. I don't care about your stupid ethnic dances. I want dirty jokes.
Yeah. All right. So Trey asked us twice, what do you think about Piss Christ? So I think that was also a weaponized, plausible deniability kind of art piece where it's like, look, like this symbolizes Jesus being like amongst human, depravity, right? Do you guys know what the Piss Christ?
Yeah, I know what the Piss Christ is.
So it's like, yeah, sure, but like, is this a celebration of Christianity and like was this meant to support or otherwise elevate Jesus and Christianity? Like the answer is like no. It's like provocative, right? And so it's like, I think that. Okay, so Trey says it was by a Catholic. Well, I mean, I think that's the problem with names and self-identification.
I don't think that was done by a Catholic. The same
guy. The guy might have been baptized when he was 5 because he happens to be, Latin American or something. But like, I'm a Catholic. I mean, come on. I mean, maybe
that guy did a. Now, side note: the lighting is pretty good on Piss Christ. If you're just analyzing it from an artistic standpoint, the lighting is pretty good. But that same guy did a cover of Metallica with other bodily fluids. We'll just leave it at that.
The Load. He was the guy that did the Load cover.
Yeah.
I put it this way: like when I was saying earlier that like don't go by the subtext or the abstracts that people are saying. Just look at what they're actually doing, and that's only what exists. If you look at that art piece, I don't care if he says, "Oh, this represents this ethereal blah blah blah." I don't care. You've put a picture of someone who's held in esteem by a religious group into urine. That is the message. The medium is the message. I'm sorry, like that. There's no way you can make that good in my book. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, I don't know that I'd go that far. I mean, but I feel like there is a certain level of like, if it was a traditional Catholic artist who did that, you could say, hey, that's in bad taste. I see what you're trying to do, but it's not appropriate. And you could also say that, like, I mean, David, you said the lighting's good on that piece. So like maybe there's some aesthetic qualities that are cool about it. I mean, if he could have used Mountain Dew and maybe that would have been like less risque, but and achieve some of the same effect, or champagne or something. But I think you can critique it on the merits of its artistic qualities, and on its sort of moral, moral properties. But anyway, I think it's a little more complicated. It's not totally black and white, but I think that, like, if I had to pick, though, I would say it's a provocative work that was not doing what it was supposed to do.
Well, and
that was a way to provide some rhetorical cover for it, as controversial. And I don't even necessarily think that the artist, has to have had an anti-Christian message, as much as like there's a marketing angle to these things, right? I mean, he's trying to make a splash, he's trying to like get noticed. So I mean, artists do this, and so I think that the controversy is often manufactured for its own sake, to draw attention to the artist. The work is almost less important.
Yeah, so there's a whole conversation, like Camille Paglia talked about this, that why is it always Christianity? And she's an atheist, and she's just like, I'm bored by this. This is like, it almost is like thinking people are being edgy when they wear black or like dye their hair black or whatever. It's just like, this is not edgy. This is faux edgy. It's entirely acceptable. You're not, I don't know to what extent you actually think that other people are like, wow.
Yeah, it's attention seeking, which is why Christianity, because
they're the majority of the country.
It's the majority. Yes, it's the dominant religious culture.
Well, and it's interesting in all these conversations, the amount of conversations about jokes that we've had to talk about what is trolling, what is serious, what is like all of these things. I feel like Piss Christ is trolling. It's trolling. And at a certain level, you actually get to a point where it doesn't bother you. It just feels like you're interacting with a grade 6 boy. It's just like, I don't know if this guy is satanic. Like, I don't even know if I'd classify him as satanic. I think he's a little boy who needs to mature.
Yeah,
right?
It's not that sophisticated. It's really not. It's not sophisticated.
I can create that art piece just by let's say I took a talit, right, and I ripped it and I put that as a picture and I said, hey, this represents how the Jews have always been trampled on in every single century. And I just kept ripping talits and I put that onto a screen and I just kept doing it in different lighting and different. And I was like, this is all about Jewish oppression. Or am I simply just ripping a talit because I don't like Jews?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I think it's obvious.
Cassandra commented, how about that it was a government-funded art piece? I tend to think that it was probably government-funded in a blanket as opposed to an artist said, hey, government, I want you to write me a check for this idea that I've got. And they're like, sure, where do I sign? I think probably there was a recipient of art funds. And unfortunately, sometimes those funds go to things that end up being controversial. So I don't know that it was, I tend to be a little more like, it's not some conspiracy that, the government is trying to fund these subversive artists. I think it just happens to be that way. And there's not a lot of supervision. Anyway, we can keep going if you guys want to.
While recognizing that not everything they said was good. Many people like G.K. Chesterton, for example. But Chesterton also said, it is not that Jews are traitors, but rather that traitors are Jews. The fact that over 1,300 people liked this tweet quoting Chesterton refutes Catholics who say anti-Semitism isn't even a thing anymore. Finally, it's anti-Catholic to claim to be a historian while rewriting Catholic history to suit your anti-Catholic prejudice. This includes falsely blaming Catholics for things in the past they did not do, like burning down the Library of Alexandria, as well as ignoring actual injustices committed against Catholics, or even claiming the injustices were made up and never happened. This kind of person is not an eccentric historian. They'd be an ideologue wielding history as a weapon against Catholics. And anti-Semites do the same thing when they falsely attribute historical crimes like blood libel to Jewish people and reject true crimes committed against Jews, like the targeted murder of Jews during the Holocaust with instruments like gas chambers. It is anti-Semitic to deny the traditional view of the Holocaust if you are doing so that you can have free reign to extol the anti-Semitic virtues of someone like Adolf Hitler and use them to slander the Jewish people as being a threat to society. And many people who do this like to say Christ is king while they're doing it. That's why the phrase Christ is king has recently become so problematic. Not because of the phrase, but because of a small group of people associated with it. For example, here is Nick Fuentes, a well-known Holocaust denier, at a rally discussing the alleged problem of too many Jews being in powerful positions in society. I'll play the whole clip so I'm not accused of taking what he said out of context.
Now you have in the universities, in the media, in Hollywood, in finance, in government, and some people say, well, they're not all Jewish. It's like, okay, well, it's half or 2/3 or 3/4. And what's the other quarter? What's the other third? What's the other half? It's not Catholics. It's not hardcore God-believing Christians. It's all kinds of other atheists, nihilists, postmodernists, whatever you want to call it. And so I don't want to say, hey, let's all attack one group, but there's a big problem when the leadership isn't Christian. We have big problems as a society when the people aren't Christian. What happens when the king and queen aren't Christian? What happens when the aristocracy isn't Christian? What happens when the cities and the business owners aren't Christian? Well, take a look around you. It's exactly what we have now. And so many of the problems that we can point to, which are blamed on various things, ideology, government, on other groups or populations, can be attributable to the loss of faith and the loss of adherence to an objective morality.
Now, I agree with him. It would be better if faithful Christians ran society. So that's not a bad thing to peacefully work towards. However, what Fuentes says next takes an anti-Semitic turn.
And so, that's a long way of saying I love Hitler. Okay, that's
Christ is king! Christ is king! Christ is king!
Pause that. The thing is, it's funny. That's what makes it funny, because he, in one sense, I don't think he actually likes Hitler all the way, but I think he does admire Hitler. But what makes it funny is he does it in he's got great comedic timing, and he just says it in a way that does make you laugh. But
Yeah.
I think what he admires about Hitler is the idea that he had a vision and he was able to put it into plan and take people in a certain direction. It could be that he just likes the whole National Socialist thing. I do actually think he is a Nietzsche, and I do actually think he does follow that kind of thinking. But it's difficult because these are like schoolboy jokes, saying "I love Hitler" and
here, let me see if I can go back. I think
Dramatic turn.
look
And so,
the,
that's a long
the end. Okay, listen to their reaction, because you're saying it's a joke, and there's questions about how much it is a joke. Listen to the reaction.
way of saying I love Hitler. Okay,
He laughs and they laugh as soon as he says it. It is all like it is anti-Semitic, but it's also a joke. It's both of those things at the exact same time. That's so weird. It's so strange. Like the amount of deniability, like look at the smile on his face. Ha ha ha. I'm joking. I'm telling a joke. You can't take me seriously, but also I just said something seriously.
it's
Crazy.
difficult because I don't know. It's difficult.
Jonathan, any thoughts on that?
Somebody came to the door, so I had to run. But I only saw the very first time you played the joke with the laughter. I mean, I just think it's like I agree with you. Like it's so over the top. It's like it could be absurd because it's funny because it's absurd, but it's also could be like it could be very real, and that's the. I think that's why I think some things ought to be taboo.
Yeah. This does not appear to me to be a very serious person. But also, I mean, and the contradictions built into it, right? Like,
Also, he might be joking and doing this thing, and it's a bit or it's a whatever, right? But he's responsible, I think, for. I think he shares some responsibility in the people who follow him, who take it more seriously and are more extreme, and he's being irresponsible.
I would agree with that.
And I think it's in a different way than, like, I think you could, he's being more than irresponsible. I think he's being probably reckless, because it doesn't take a genius to see what you're kind of enabling and what a very legitimate subtext of this whole thing really is, and like what it can cover for. And so it's not just like, oh, maybe that wasn't the right way to, it wasn't an accident.
yeah.
It really reminds me of the 90s black metal thing, where in the beginning of black metal, it was like kind of Slayer and these underground bands like Bathory, where it was all about we're about Satan, and they were like doing pentagram photos and all this kind of stuff. And then you listen to their interviews and you're like, we don't believe any of that stuff. We were just doing that to be provocative. It's like also like wrestling. It's like, oh, at the time they were like, no, this is real. And then years later they're like, oh, you thought that was real? We were just playing the game.
But
And
again, the whole idea of metamodernism, though, is that it's a joke, but there's also something real there and we're going to do reality even within the joke itself, right? Slavoj Žižek was brought up earlier, and he has this idea where he talks about the Matrix. I want a third pill. And the third pill is where I can see the truth even in the lie, where like you can see people lying, but you can see the thing underneath it. The getting at whatever's like the
intention
thing. Yeah.
Well,
and I feel, yeah, go ahead.
I think with black metal, I know I keep going back to this black metal thing, but I think that is kind of what happened. Like, so they were pretending to be satanic, but what did that actually lead to? Like, it led to people becoming like atheist or pagan. So that did actually lead to the rejection of Christianity, which is what a Satanist would want. So
but
even though,
and at the same time, you have a song like War Pigs, which is, sung by Ozzy Osbourne, but is a pretty Christian song, if you ask me.
It's a Christian song, yeah.
Yeah. It's speaking generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses, right? Speaking of death and destruction and everything, and Satan's laughing as all these things occur. It's using like, is that a satanic song? Is Black Sabbath?
That was Venom's main contention with Black Sabbath. Venom. So I don't know if you guys do you know Venom, the band?
I don't know Venom.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, so like from the late 70s, they were like the first satanic metal band. Obviously, I think there may have been people before them, but they were the first openly satanic speed metal band or black metal band, right? And he always said, my problem with Ozzy Osbourne was that he would talk about Satan and stuff and then be like, God save me. And he would be like, I hated that about that. I always wanted to be the one who was actually doing the affliction to another person. Like he wanted to be Satan in the song, right? And I think what Nick is doing is he is like saying, the things that I like about these jokes, for instance, like Hitler jokes and stuff, is it's transgressive, it's edgy, it's something you're not allowed to say. But he's going that extra step and saying, I actually want that to be true. I want the edginess to be the actual joke.
Well, in the band Rancid, two of the members formed a band later on called Christ the Conqueror and released like a Christian album where they're like, no, we are displaying what evil is. Sorry, not Rancid. Why did I say Rancid?
I was gonna say Rancid is like
the Misfits. The Misfits.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Misfits. Two guys from Misfits did that. But one of the guys who was originally from the Misfits, the guys who are in Christ the Conqueror, are like, no, he's actually a Satanist. So you have people within the band who are legitimately engaging in that evil stuff, and then other people who are like, no, we're Christians, and we think that this is satire making fun of Satanism.
Yeah. Same thing with Slayer. Tom Araya is a Catholic, but Kerry King, is like 100% atheist, and Jeff Hanneman were like atheists, right? But Tom Araya was always like, this is a joke, or like, I'm just trying to make you believe that I believe this, but I actually don't believe this.
Yeah,
it's performance art in some sense.
I feel like terms like meta-modern are really important to understanding this moment that we're looking at right now, where it's like, it's a joke, it's serious. Two of the members of Misfits are Christian. Some of them are actually Satanists. Some of them, this guy gets caught with this and was completely serious. This person left to become a born-again Christian. All this stuff.
Christ is king! 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 Christ is king!
And the joke about Hitler is not a one-off piece of irony. Here's Fuentes praising Hitler at length.
I saw something on Twitter. I don't even know if this is true, but something on Twitter said like all of Hitler's girlfriends were 16 and 17. And Alex Jones, I don't even know if that's true, but if that is, that's probably why Alex Jones called Hitler a pedophile. And it's like, you be saying the same thing about Hitler. MLK was a rapist and Hitler was a pedophile. It's like, you know what? The world's a little bit more complicated than that. Okay, the world's a little bit more complicated than you're making it out to be.
What a punchable face that guy has. It's the way he's talking is so young man. Like it's such a grade 6 thing, which I engaged in myself. I'm not like I really need to rewatch the movie Dogma and just like feel terrible about how much I loved it when I was younger. Because I thought that movie was like enlightened and intelligent. And as I've thought back on it, I'm like, this is actually like, I was in grade 8 when I saw it. So that's my defense. But yeah, there's that kind of tone that I'm just like, no man who's a mature man talks in this way. And if they do, it's just like, please stop listening to this person. They are a child.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right, boys? Am I right? Let's go. He was also really cool. And any boy knows that. Anybody who watches these videos where he's rolling down the street and stuff, it's like, this guy's awesome. This guy's cool.
There's a lot more that can be said about the precise place Jewish people have in the plan of
pause it
salvation,
there.
or how.
Yeah.
So when you're a kid, like a young man, like, okay, maybe say like 14, 15, 16, you think that dictators are cool just because they can
Dictate.
enforce their will on the other. Yeah, exactly. Like put their will into the world and make that, And I think that's why it's funny, is because he's got that kind of like 14, 15-year-old humor, and he's extended it, and he's basically trying to justify. Yeah, you're right. He's just trying to justify being like 14 or 15, or whatever you found cool at 14 or 15 is basically what is cool. I think that's what he's trying to say.
But
Exactly.
it's like, how long are you allowed to do that? And at what point, like, because there's some songs from my youth, emo was very popular in my youth. And some of that stuff is unlistenable. It's just like, you have to be 16 or 17. And I have one of my friends is dating someone who's a bit older. And so she's my age and he's about 5 years older. And we were on a road trip and we were listening to these terrible emo songs, and he wanted to contribute, and he brought in this song, and I was like, no, this song is too mature. What I liked about these bands, part of it is their immaturity. I don't want to hear a grown-ass man who's mature talking about these things. It's gotta, yeah, it's a bad look.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how old Nick Fuentes is?
I think he's about 25,
Yeah.
something like that.
He does. Yeah, he looks like
Lord of the Flies.
looks like a widow baby.
Anti-Semites misinterpret the Bible and previous magisterial teaching. I may address those issues in a future episode, as well as refute the arguments anti-Semites make in defense of their various conspiracy theories. For now, my goal has just been to show that anti-Semitism, which mirrors anti-Catholicism in its conspiratorial slandering of a people who seek to worship God, is evil. And no one who proclaims Christ is king should be celebrating evil, ever. In 1925, Pope Pius XI established the Feast of Christ the King because, as he put it, the rebellion of individuals and states against the authority of Christ has produced deplorable consequences. These deplorable consequences included godless states like the Soviet Union, but it would soon manifest in counterfeit state-sponsored religions. In 1937, Pope Pius XI had an encyclical written in German, smuggled into Nazi Germany, to be read in Catholic churches. It condemned those who idolize race and said, whoever distorts and perverts an order of the world planned and created by God, he is far from the true faith in God and from the concept of life which that faith upholds. Many of the Nazi elite believed National Socialism was incompatible with Christianity. However, some Nazis tried to create a framework called positive Christianity that would use a Nazi view of the faith to unite Protestants and Catholics. But positive Christianity was only appealing to about 500,000 so-called German Christians, whose beliefs are chronicled in Doris Bergen's book, Twisted Cross, The German Christian Movement in the Third Reich. Nazi theologians also promoted this view by establishing the Institute for the Study and Eradication of Jewish Influence on German Religious Life. This is chronicled in Heschel's book, The Aryan Jesus, Christian Theologians and the Bible in Nazi Germany. Fortunately, brave Catholics and Protestants like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Father Maximilian Kolbe were willing to stand against the Nazi appropriation of Christianity, eventually paying for it with their lives in Nazi concentration camps. For these men, Christ was truly their king, and Hitler was not awesome. Denying the Holocaust happened is a slap in the face to the real Christians who were willing to give their lives to save people from genocide. The true spirit of Christ the King can be seen in a secret radio campaign led by Sefton Delmer, a British journalist who was born in Germany and knew Hitler personally. These radio shows that sounded like real German broadcasts hurt Nazi morale by broadcasting Allied victories, as well as rumors of things like Nazi officers sleeping with German soldiers' wives while they're dying on the front lines. However, one of the stations was hosted by a rural Austrian priest who didn't resort to any propaganda or falsehoods. All he did was describe true reports about how thousands of sick people, political prisoners, and Jews were being killed in concentration camp gas chambers. And the station's name was Christus der König. In English, Christ the King. As we enter into Holy Week, I pray all of us will strive to make Christ the King of our own lives and reject any ideology that would slander the Jewish people, since our Lord said in John 4:22 that salvation is from the Jews. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a very blessed day.
Okay. With that last bit where he said salvation is of the Jews, that is a very specific sentence referring to the idea that Jesus is from the Jewish race. I think there has to be a line made between criticism of Judaism, criticism of Jewish people, and anti-Semitism. I don't think those are all the same thing. And I think there's like a muddling up of all those three things when people are getting into arguments about this.
So you have three categories I think you've just described. You have criticizing the religious system, belief, structure. You have criticizing the individual and criticizing the group as a group. I think that's the anti-Semitism, is when you lump them in a group.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And the only thing, and specifically but it's hard to disentangle what makes them a group.
Yeah, exactly. It is, I would say, I mean, this is going to be because I'm coming from a Christian point of view. I would say the Passover is what makes Jews a group. And that sitting down around a table and eating together is what makes Jews a group. Because even if they're not religious, they're still probably going to attend a Passover and have Friday night dinner. So I think that's where the locus of community life comes from in Judaism, I think. Right, these holidays and festivals, and because even go ahead, David.
I'm a Messianic Christian, so I also celebrate Passover, but I don't consider myself a Jew.
I wouldn't consider you a Jew either, to be fair.
Yeah,
I don't think Jews would consider you a Jew either.
No, they definitely don't. They definitely don't.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think it's the communal life is what makes them a group. But if there's an issue in the religious system and you criticize that, and that fell upon all the Jews, would that be the same as just saying Jews are bad because of this and that? I don't think that's the same thing, personally.
Yeah.
Like if you said, there's this one doctrine that's found here, and just because Jewish people as a whole are taught this doctrine from birth, that means that they all accept this proposition, and I don't like that proposition. If I say that, does that make me anti-Semitic? If to say that?
Yeah. This again feels like we're going back to the idea of what you're saying versus what you mean by it. and that becomes so important, because it's just like, I don't even, there are so many different definitions of what a Jew is, right? And so how do we distinguish stuff? Is it supposed to be through blood tests? What about converts? How does all this stuff work?
Well, being Punjabi, right? Like, Sikhism is an ethno-religious group. It's just that it's pretty much the same as Judaism in that sense, right? Like, I don't need to look at somebody's religion to know that they're Punjabi. I can look at their face and I can see it. And even if they look, like kind of ambiguous, I can see it, even when nobody else can see it. And every single Punjabi has the ability to do that. I don't know why, we just can. I think Jewish people can do this too. I assume that they can do this too, right?
Dre, you're saying you have really good gaydar? Is that essentially what you're saying?
I knew it.
Maybe, but no, but I just think that, like, it's deeper than just for a Jew to say what categorizes as a Jew. I think it's something that they can feel and see.
But Dre,
Like,
one of the things we said early on is that you understand why people would speak to me in Punjabi, and I get spoken to in Punjabi all the time. People see my face and they make assumptions based on that. So I've experienced racism for races I don't belong to.
True.
When I was in high school, someone thought that I was mixed race, and I got called the N-word by someone who meant it. I was into punk rock in high school, and a skinhead thought that I was mixed race and insulted me for that fact. I get, and after 9/11, if I took a plane ride, I have brothers and sisters. Like, I have a brother who's brown hair, was born blonde, right? When they do a random bag check, guess who has to take his shoes off? not my blonde born brother, me.
But I would know that you aren't a Sikh Punjabi.
Okay.
I would say, oh, maybe he's from West Pakistan, or from. I would know that. Oh, maybe he's Punjabi in this sense, but I would know you're not a Sikh Punjabi. Sikh Punjabis have a specific look and a specific.
Yeah.
We just know when we see each other. It's like, I know that's a Sikh Punjabi. I know that's not a Muslim Punjabi. I know that's not a Hindu Punjabi. I just know that's a Sikh Punjabi. And I think Jews can do the same thing, where they can go, I know that's a Jewish person. Specifically, I know that's a Jewish person. I don't know how this works. I just feel they have this same thing where it's, I don't know if it's like a genetic thing. I just think it exists. I could be completely being irrational here, but I just feel like it
So
exists.
what you're saying is that there's Jews all around, and we don't know they're Jewish, but they know that they're Jewish. That sounds kind of like the beginning of conspiracy theory conversation.
No, but like, you might have somebody Jewish go up to somebody who they think is Jewish, and the person goes, I'm not Jewish. And then what if they look in their 23andMe and then they go, oh, actually, no, I have some Jewish ancestry.
Right.
Like, just because, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's just like a weird, primitive Eastern thing to be like, I just know what a Sikh Punjabi looks like. But I feel it just exists. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Can anybody who's Jewish in the chat give me some like backup here? Like, does this exist, or am I just being crazy?
No.
They're letting you twist here, buddy.
Yeah. I'm giving you a hard time. I don't think that you're incorrect. And Dre, I do think it's important that you're here, because it is dependent upon off-white people to talk about things that I've experienced myself, where you can make jokes about stuff, and it's just like, man, if it was all white people would think that this was anti-Semitic or that this was racist. But thank God that there's Filipinos, because Filipinos love, like, when someone says that they're Filipino, I always say to them, actually, it's pronounced Filipino from the Philippines. And they think that's hilarious, right? But non-Filipinos were just like, was that okay? Did he just, was that all right? And it's just like, yeah, it's totally fine. From the Philippines.
Yeah, I definitely do think that this conversation would be a lot more difficult if there wasn't somebody who wasn't white.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I think what were we even talking about at the beginning? I can't even remember.
How did we get here?
I don't know. All I know is that I just feel like tribes can sense who is a part of their tribe and who is not a part of their tribe in some sort of, like, I don't know if it's like an evolutionary thing.
Oh, that's an interesting idea, because the whole idea of picking up dog whistles is people outside of the tribe being like, oh, I think they're actually part of the tribe. And like, and a lot of claims of racism and stuff is just like, oh, they're actually part of the tribe. It's what you're saying in this like demonic turn that I actually know. I know what you're doing. I know what you're getting at. And it's something completely different.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on, is like they're creating a tribe. Like Nick Fuentes specifically, or that guy, is creating a tribe of people on the internet. And that's why they are able to talk to each other and spot each other in room. Like they have like so much inner like in jokes that they could probably, if they were in a room with somebody who was in that same tribe, let's say, they could probably say like a couple of words or a couple of sentences that they would be like, oh, I know that guy's in my group. I think that's what all this dog whistling stuff is they're just creating a tribe that's on the internet. Just like how people create tribes in real life. That's kind of what's going on. I think it's just tribal warfare, but just digital tribal warfare. I don't know. Maybe I'm just
I think there's some truth to that. But what I think we can all agree on is that whoever is king, the king is still Jewish.
Judean, yeah.
Judean.
Yeah, he's a Judean.
What do you mean by Judean?
He's from the line of Judah. I'll go with that. He's the son of David. I'll go with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Because rabbinic Judaism to me is not what, I don't think that's what David was doing.
You don't think King David was doing rabbinic Judaism?
Yeah, I don't think he was doing that. I mean, that's what the Christian contention is.
What was he doing?
Well, we think he was doing a temple-based religion that was whatever the Israelites were doing. We don't think that like they were doing, like, the rabbinic system possibly comes from Ezra. Like I can go that far back because the synagogue system was created by him. But we don't think that like David and Joshua and all those guys.
Wait, you just said the synagogue system, but we were talking about rabbinic.
Oh, so the rabbinic system is based off a rabbinate.
Which started with who?
Well,
starts with an M.
It depends. It depends on. Well, that depends if you think Moses was called a rabbi. Like
they call him Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses our teacher.
Right, but it depends if the term rabbi means what it's meant now. I don't think it's the same thing. Because if you look at what they would. Well, now you would, if you said rabbi, everybody knows you're thinking of a guy in a black blazer with black trousers, with a white shirt, with a kippah on, with his beard and glasses. You're not thinking of a guy who's in temple regalia, who's got a breastplate with different jewels on it,
that's
a turban.
Yeah, that's because we don't. There's no.
Well, I mean, obviously he wasn't a priest, but you're not. When you think of priests and sacrifices, you don't think of rabbinic Judaism.
I find the voice that Hezi does very anti-Semitic.
Voice that he does?
Yeah, his actual voice.
Yeah, it's super anti-Semitic, guys. It's very stereotypical. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't want to say anything. If I say anything, I might be in trouble. So I'm just going to not say anything. I no, but yeah, in terms of that, I don't think that like what rabbinic Judaism does today is the same as what David was doing. Maybe you could derive it, but I don't think it is what David was doing.
don't, as you were saying, I don't think he wore big Russian fur hat. Like,
Yeah, he didn't have a
fur hat.
shtreimel. No, he didn't have a
Certainly didn't
shtreimel.
do that.
Yeah, but those things are that's not what is the essential part of rabbinic Judaism.
No, but like
you don't
the
have to have those
vestments.
things.
I'm sorry, but there's people who live in Israel who still wear those outfits because they do believe that it's essential. They believe that the rules as set out when they were living in Eastern Europe are identical when they're living in the middle of the desert. So, yeah, it's so obvious to us that that's not an essential, but then stop wearing the hat. You're living in the desert. This is not a time to wear a giant fur hat.
I mean,
it's the same as any kind of it's a tradition, and you could maybe say it's a small T tradition,
right?
Because it's the same as like if I wanted to be a good trad Catholic, I might build a Gothic cathedral, even though there's nothing essential about Gothic architecture. In fact, like most of the Western Christian architecture is Roman Empire chic. So I guess like it
right, but
it's
the
superficial. It's an identifier. It's a marker, but it's not something that like is. I guess if you equate the superficial things with what is meant by like the rabbinic tradition or the rabbinical Judaism, I think that's a mistake.
But for instance, like in Leviticus and stuff like that, and Deuteronomy, all these different times when they talk about like how the breastplate is put together, the Urim and the Thummim, and all these kinds of things, these are Torah, and I don't see any of that in modern rabbinic Judaism.
No, because you don't see a temple.
Right, exactly.
So where
how can it be the same thing if there's no temple?
Well, there was a period before there was a temple, then there was a period after the first temple, and then there was a period after the second temple.
Yeah, and so Jacob, just to represent how Jacob would understand it, if I could, is that at the end of, particularly in the prophetic literature, they are also having to live without a temple. So they're already in the time of Christ. There are people that don't even believe in the temple when it's rebuilt. They see it as a completely corrupt institution, and that Judaism, even within the Old Testament, is already adapting to the lack of temple.
Are we saying that
to the second temple? It wasn't the Pharisees, was it?
Sorry, what was that?
Sadducees would have not.
Yeah,
the Essenes.
Yeah. The Qumran community didn't believe in the legitimacy of the temple, and there were others as well.
Yeah, Therapeutae maybe, but I like. Are we really saying that those inter-temple periods, like where there's no first temple, there's no tabernacle, and there's no second temple, are we really saying like in between those times? Oh, we're reverting to rabbinic Judaism between those times. But then when there's a temple, we go straight back into priestly vestments, all that stuff. I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. I think there would have to be some change in between those things. And I just don't think there would be like a rabbinate in between temples. It just doesn't make sense to me. Because it's not written down anywhere. Maybe in the Talmud there's something saying, oh, in between these times we did this and that. Okay, someone would have to tell me where that is so I can look it up and verify and whatever. But I just don't see it.
I mean, what do you make of then when Jesus says the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses?
Well, I think the seat of Moses is well, one, I think it's an actual seat that was in the temple, where the head priest would have sat down, because we have
Moses wasn't a priest, was he?
no, but it's talking about the office of
Right.
Moses, right?
The office of
So, like,
Moses,
the
I don't
high
think is a
priest.
priestly office.
Well, when I've
that was
looked at
Aaron.
architectural drawings of synagogues, there tends to be a place that is called the seat of Moses, which is where whoever is leading that synagogue is sitting. So, and for instance, we have like a bishop's throne in the church where the bishop sits.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what they mean by the seat of Moses, is there is a person who is in charge of doctrine at this time, who is sitting in that seat of Moses, which is an office of authority, and you should listen to that office of authority because God put that there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Jesus is saying, based on what I have researched. You know, like I wouldn't say that like I don't think Jesus is saying you need to follow every single rabbinic tradition ever created because all of it's true. That's where I think the jump is for people on the Jewish side, is they say that Jesus is affirming every single rabbinic tradition. I don't think that's true.
Got it. Which ones do you think he
Was affirming?
Yeah.
Well, I think anything to do with temple worship that was directly from, like things like Semicha may have. I think that's probably true because that's carried on in the church. But you also see it in like other sects of Judaism. This idea of like Semicha. There are things that you can see that are attested to in not just Pharisaical Judaism, but in other forms of Judaism. And I think that is what's adding, that's what gives it veracity. So that's one measuring stick, I guess you could say, of the tradition. Also, I think you can just look at archaeology and the historical attestations, like what were they actually doing at that time? So we can look at like what other people were writing about them. And I don't think you're going to find a rabbinic port in like pre-Second Temple or anything like that. I think you're going to find a lot of precursors to rabbinic traditions, like how they wash their hands 3 times. Maybe that was a real thing. I don't know. It probably was. Like you wash your hands 3 times and things like that, and wash your feet 3 times and all that stuff. Like I think maybe that's there. But I don't know if you need to go into like let's think of a rabbinic law. Oh, at Purim you have to get drunk as until you can't deduce Hanan from something else, and then you have to eat as much meat as you can. Like I don't. That's a rabbinic tradition, right? That's in Mishnah Torah or Wars of Kings or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think like that to me doesn't even sound correct. Like the idea of getting drunk and eating loads and loads of meat, that sounds like it's against the Bible. Personally, I always thought the Bible was like about moderation and things like that. So there are things like that that could be added on. Like, you know, just
that particular one. I mean, a lot of this is interpretation, like as we were talking about the interpretation, which goes over top of the thing. And is this legitimate or is it illegitimate? Specifically with that, it speaks of the descendants of Haman to be forgotten. So how they are forgotten is that when you publicly are doing a play on Purim, whenever Haman's name is said, well, if his name is in the text, then we're going to remember who he is. So our interpretation of that and what becomes culturally significant is everyone is given noisemakers. And whenever his name is uttered, everyone boos and like makes noise so that we can't even hear his name, right? Which is a lot of fun. And it's quote unquote to fulfill that passage. but then it's just like it's funny because Jews will look at how Christians believe that Old Testament is fulfilled, and they'll be like, that's not what that's talking about. And it's just like, yeah, and Purim isn't talking about that either. Just deal with it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we obviously are fulfilling, well, I don't think the Jews would agree with this at all, is we would say that we are fulfilling mitzvot the same way. We're doing mitzvot in a completely different way that a Jew is doing it. Like, for instance, I think, there's this idea that when the Messiah comes, certain days that were of mourning will become certain days of like joy and stuff like that. And we have in Christianity where we've kind of flipped some of the days around, like where they do actually become like joyful days and stuff like that. A Jewish person would say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and again, interpretation of how those things are understood. The first time I read the book of Isaiah, I thought it was kind of anti-Semitic. I was just, these Jews, what is the problem with these Jews? And I'm just like, oh, no, yeah, but you have to understand it from, you know what I mean? Like, if you read, I understand that people read the Gospel of John and they interpret it as anti-Semitic. But I literally felt that Isaiah was anti-Semitic the first time I read it.
Well, a lot of Jewish writing is self-critical. I mean, that's kind of the mark of Jewish writing, is that you are like, if you've ever read penitential prayers in the Orthodox tradition, or even the canon of Saint Andrew of Crete, it's like we're calling ourselves the worst of humanity and all this but you read the Selichot prayers, and it's the same thing. We're doing this same thing where we're like degrading ourselves, because in comparison to God, we are actually nothing. We are but a worm, as King David would say. So I just think I don't know. I just think the interpretation on the rabbinic side just doesn't. I don't know. I just don't think it makes sense personally. But I don't know. Maybe who am I to say that? Because a Jewish person will be like, "Well, we're actually Jewish. We've been doing this for centuries." And then a Christian will say, "Well, yeah, we were also Jewish too, and we've been doing this for centuries." It's like, I don't know. I think it's too complex. It's just too complex.
I want to read a title of an article from The Onion, published in March 16th, 2012. Okay. So this is when The Onion was still funny. Sale of BET to white supremacists group results in no changes to programming. Where the idea of like what satire is, what joking is, what criticism looks like when you're within a group versus when you're outside of the group, making literally identical criticisms. So I just think it's perfect. Sale of BET to white supremacist group results in no changes to programming.
So does that basically mean anti-Semitism can be defined by who's doing the insulting or the criticizing?
In some situations, without a doubt, it is. Right?
If it's just like somebody who's non-Jewish saying, "Hey, what's like a common criticism of Jewish people? They like money, right? Let's go for that one, right? If someone who's non-Jewish says,
how about a common criticism of humanity?
I will say,
well, yeah, exactly.
I'll say one that was actually said to me before.
What's up, Mitch?
Again, when you having dated a Middle Eastern person, someone told me that they are called jewels because of the Jews. Like when you say like a precious stone is a jewel, that it's just like, this is obviously because of the Jews' love for such things.
Yeah. So if a Jewish guy says that, then I guess it's not anti-Semitic. But if somebody else says that, then it becomes anti-Semitic.
It's of Anglo-French origin.
I like that you immediately looked it up. I love it.
Etymology. for the win.
Another guy said that, like, we were talking about culture and about how does culture play into decisions and all these other things, and this Syrian guy said to me, yes, this is why the Jews all become lawyers, so that they can control all the laws. He just said it just like matter of fact.
But do you think maybe what Christianity is trying to say is that if the entire of humanity is basically one thing, then we're all family, and if we criticize each other, then like it doesn't matter because we're all part of the same thing. Whereas, do you think that like the Jewish view would be like, no, we are separate tribes, and if you criticize me, you are not in my tribe. You don't have the right to do that. Do you think that could be something going on there? Maybe.
Well, it's again what we mean by language, because one person will say something and it's a joke and we're friends and we're just playing around, and then it's just like no, I actually mean this. So I don't care if people who are my friends are racist towards me. Like if there's a certain amount of friendship that if I'm close enough friends with you, I don't mind you being racist towards me. You could do it all you want if you like me.
Yeah,
I don't
But
care.
they're not really racist though at that point, right? They're making jokes about difference or whatever.
Yes,
right?
but they're making identical comments that other people would make, that they want me to know that they hate me.
Right. Which is weird because that shows the context. Like they either celebrated you maybe, or they use it as a sign of antipathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is that really a sufficient like explanation that it's just dependent on who's doing it?
Yeah.
Because but what if it's like a legitimate criticism and it's just coming from the wrong person? Does that mean that it's not legitimate anymore?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the easiest ways of dismissing stuff, right? It's just like, look, there's no harmful black stereotypes in rap music. It's not harmful. It's not racist. It's not bringing an entire culture down because it's created by them. That's fine.
So let's take a super safe example. So I'm English.
Safe example. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm English. And so Dre, you could probably tell me some stereotypes about a white Englishman. Right.
Right.
And some of those are negative stereotypes. And I would say that probably, and so to the degree that I am at least like, ethnically more closely associated with at least the genetic makeup of that, classical white English person, it will be on the mark. Granted, I'm American, a couple generations, whatever, right?
Right.
And so I think that there is, in the right circumstance, if some like angry Irish revolutionary said that, all of you English are, colonialist bastards, whatever, right? And I might be like, well, piss off. But if you're like my buddy, you're my friend, and you happen to be like not English, but you see what English people can be like, right?
You're uptight. Please express an emotion.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So, and I'll be like, all right, guilty as charged. I will try to, express more emotion and be less uptight, right? Yeah. I can take the criticism. I can see that it's like that. And I guess like, I'm not going to say
I'll give you one that English people do.
Bring it, please.
They are obsessed with systems.
Yeah.
Over analytical.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing so in a British accent, Trey. Thank you.
That's right.
Lets some credibility. But it is interesting too, because like having grown up among Italians, Maltese is essentially Italian. Growing up in that way, but I was just surrounded by Italian Catholics. Learning about Italian stereotypes really helped me deconstruct how I understood myself. Where like my family just yelled all the time. We were hot-blooded Mediterranean people, right? And like when I first married my English wife, the first time we were playing a game, and it was divided like boys versus girls. And when it was the girls' turn, my brother made like a farting noise. It was just going like while it was my mom's turn, and my mom immediately started crying. And my dad immediately started yelling at my brother, Michael, how dare you? And then my brother's just like, I didn't mean it. What was it? And my wife, her eyes just go huge. And then the most insane thing happened, which is 20 seconds later, my mom stopped crying, everyone stopped yelling, and we just kept on playing the game and having a good time. And Katie, my wife, just was like, if that happened with my family, we would talk about it secretly for a decade. You guys, it was nothing.
Yeah.
You
The rest of your life,
on.
yeah, the rest of your life would have been punctuated by that moment.
And like when I get into an argument with my wife, I'm like shaking because I'm just trying all the time not to yell because I come by it naturally.
I honestly think that the way to overcome all this anti-Semitism stuff is just to allow people to joke with each other about this, like, and no holds barred. Like, just get Jews in a room with people who are anti-Semitic and just let them go at each other and just laugh and joke and just make all the jokes until it just goes away.
Okay. I think though, like we should explore that a little bit, but like the English stereotype you gave me when I invited you to hit me with your best shot, you called us systematizers, right? Now, that one doesn't particularly hurt. And if anything, it could be a point of pride, especially if you value systematizing. You're like, great, perfect. That's been my plot all along, right?
I said emotionally repressed.
Okay. And like the thing is though, like, I guess maybe there's, maybe this is my white privilege talking, but those things don't hurt. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Emotionally repressed and a systematizer. Like, there's worse things in the world. But
English can be quite cold.
English food. Now that is mean. That's rude.
I think the English can be quite cold in terms of like familial relationships.
Yes,
they can be very cold.
Sure. Yeah,
they're also more prone to being promiscuous, I would say.
More prone to being promiscuous.
But
that's a new one.
It's fascinating because if you watch, so I think that trash TV accidentally is profound. So my wife and I watch Love is Blind. I won't stop talking about this, but the most recent series of Love is Blind has a black couple, and they won't shut up about black excellence and like they refer to themselves as black and what being black means and why the significance of their relationship. She almost chose a white guy. So they talk about how important it is that they're both black. And as a result, they're having a way more profound conversation about race than this past HR, this is appropriate, this is a good message, because they have all kinds of problems related to the black community, and they just deal with it as a matter of fact without constantly apologizing. I don't mean this to be stereotypical. I don't mean for this to be this. I don't mean it for it to be that. They just do things that are so culturally different than what me and my wife did when we were dating, that you just immediately see it. It's just there. We're not apologizing for it. You can just see it in all of what it is. And so some of it is also why I think that like Chris Rock's commentary on there are two different kinds of black people is like incredible cultural analysis that I can't repeat. Because if I repeated it, it would be racist. It'd be incredibly racist. And I'm sure people who are racist have said it, right? Like,
does that make it true or false?
That it's funny, or because the funniness is
like
part of it.
Like the fact that you can't say it
But it's
Does that
again,
affect the truth or the falsehood of it?
again, Dre, was Satan lying to Adam and Eve? Their eyes are open. They don't die immediately. I still think it's a lie. I think it's entirely true. And yet it's also a lie.
I don't know. I think really what we're just saying is you can tell the truth in any way, but you just have to say it in a certain way. I think that's what it boils down to.
I worked with this. I worked at this place one time, and I had these interactions with this girl. We worked 3 shifts in a row on a weekend. It was the first weekend she worked at this place that I worked. And so we had spent like, I can't even remember. They were long shifts. So I had spent over 10 hours with this person. And we got into all these conversations. It was a slow weekend. So we were talking a lot. And this girl was starting to flirt with me. And, you know, there was a way that she was engaging. And then at the end of the 3rd day, someone else brought up the fact that she had a boyfriend. And I looked at, and I think they were responding to the way that we were communicating with each other. And I looked at her and I said, you have a boyfriend? And she looked at me and said, I didn't say I didn't have a boyfriend. And I was just like, oh man, we all know what happened. And you get to pretend that none of it happened. You get to pretend that we're not carrying the baggage or that we're not engaging the way that we're engaging because, well, on a technicality, which is why it's all of these conversations with consent actually overlap with all this stuff, because you have a whole bunch of autistic people who are dating people who people are saying, well, I gave nonverbal cues. Just like, yeah, but what if this person doesn't understand nonverbal cues? What if this person understands nonverbal cues but can pretend that they don't understand nonverbal cues?
Yeah, man. I don't know. I feel like if we're going to get past all this stuff with Nick Fuentes and this Christ is King stuff, we just need to let Jews and Christians have like a national conversation on this whole thing and just hash it out. Like, that's pretty much the only way. It's because of like the complete disconnection between the two communities.
Like, I don't think it's going to be that fruitful to, I mean, hash it out. Sure. Continue talking, understanding each other. Yes, sure. I think that ultimately, though, we're kind of both in 2 different betting camps, right? We're both betting on our horse, and we don't control when the race ends, but we can bet on our horses, and so we can scream at each other, you know, whose horse is going to win, but we're not going to be able to prove it until the finish line comes. And so, in the meantime, we should be civil and friends and supportive, and not insecure, I guess, such that we feel like we need to like twist the other side's arm into submission.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's between Christians and Jews, I think. Muslims present a different challenge, but
Well,
and not all, but some.
I think if you had on a national level, this is what I think would help. And it could be just completely stupid. It might not help at all. If there was some sort of national conversation on, like, let's say they're voting over a specific policy, right? Jewish people, if they are being influenced by a certain thing from their philosophy, they need to state, I believe this thing, and it's because my philosophy has led me to this conclusion. The Christians will then say, well, I believe this thing because it says in my writings that I need to believe this thing. Then if we were just being honest about where we're getting our ideas from, on both sides, then that would make things at least somewhat easier.
Yeah, but I mean, this comes back to the idea of like lying, or what do we mean? Because there's people that they don't. You're assuming that you know why you're doing things, and that people know why they're doing things, and that part of all these conversations about when Jonathan used the term privilege and all these other things, it really is this idea of like, what are you bringing into it that you don't even realize that you're bringing into it? Because the whole issue with the hermeneutics of suspicion, which is quite true, because we can see people being triggered, and what being triggered means is like you think you're reacting normally, but really something happened, and now you're not even interacting with what I'm saying logically. You're interacting with me from a place of I was harmed, or a particular, like literally a bias that came from a past experience that has nothing to do with me, right? That's what it means to be triggered, right? And so all of these conversations there's these other things where the hermeneutics of suspicion is helpful sometimes. But if that's all you have, then everything breaks apart, and we can't trust Christians saying statements of faith, because that's anti-Semitic now. It's just a statement of faith, like Christ is king. That's a belief I have, right?
Oh, man, it's too complex for me. But I'm gonna make a move. I'm gonna go head off to the gym, and let's get this bread.
Okay.
See you
Good to
guys.
hang. Yeah. Yeah, it's 3:00 here on Eastern time, so I'm going to end the stream, and thanks everybody for playing our game.
It was lots of fun. Thanks,
Bye.
Jonathan. Bye.